1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. It may be a Wednesday today, but it is a Fireball Hot Take Friday on this program. We're treating it like a Friday. In fact, we should have asked Corey if he wanted to come on the show, Ian, but I guess we didn't have the foresight to do that. But other than that, it's a Fireball Hot Take Friday today. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
So we're going to treat it like a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Everything's on the table. Again, I don't know. Ian, we may be the only two people in the city of Nashville that are working on July 3rd in the afternoon. Might be the only two people.
Maybe.
But you know what? That's okay. I can live with that. So I want to start with my Fireball Hot Take, which is something that I'm sure a lot of people are going to get upset about, even though it's good for your team. But it's just, I just have come to grips with the fact that a lot of people are going to get mad about my opinions one way or another, and it is what it is. So The Athletic came out today. Chris Johnson had a story. It actually dropped at the very, very end of our show yesterday. Inside the breakup between Steven Stamkos and the Tampa Bay Lightning. And in it, Johnston alludes to the fact that the best long-term offer from Tampa for Steven Stamkos was an 8-year, $3 million AAV deal. Again, 8 years, $3 million per. That is a total of $24 million. This is for a guy who made over $24 million every 3 years on his last contract. This is a guy who's going to make $32 million from the Predators on this contract. It was basically a slap in the face offer. It was the kind of offer that Julien Brisebois, the general manager of the Tampa Bay Lightning, had to make to show that we tried to make an offer for Stamkos, but it's the kind of offer they knew he would turn down. It would be like if the Titans had called Derrick Henry and said, "We'll give you $4 million. He never would have taken that, and he shouldn't have. And so as someone who has spent 9 years in the same spot doing essentially the same job, I can tell you that you know as an employee, or at least I know as an employee, when I am wanted and when I am not. And Brisebois made it obvious to Stamkos that he did not want him. Tampa, because Brisebois has bosses, made it obvious to Steven Stamkos that they did not want him. You make that kind of offer, he knows that Steven Stamkos is going to say no. And on the off chance that Steven Stamkos says yes, it's almost like, hey, we got a 40-goal scorer at $3 million a year. With Stamkos saying that he knew when they didn't offer an extension last year, which has been something Stamkos has said through almost every interview he's done, he said the writing was on the wall. When they didn't offer him an extension last year, he knew. He knew he wasn't wanted. Stamkos even said he would have taken a hometown discount to stay in Tampa, just not an astronomical hometown discount, not one that borders on exploitation, which, again, $3 million a year for Stamkos. I don't care if he's 33, $3 million a year. I mean, that's ridiculous. Which means your general manager, Barry Trotz, who, by the way, has never won a Stanley Cup. Technically, Julien Brisebois won 2. Trotz is betting on something that Julien Brisebois did not want to touch with a 10-foot pole. As I have said all week, somebody is right and somebody is wrong. And guess what? I'm going to say Barry Trotz is right. Now, I don't know if that's a homer take or not. I don't know if that's there it is. Barry Trotz goes on his show. So because Barry Trotz goes on the show, he's going to sit there and say that this is a good deal because he's pumping Barry's tires. It doesn't matter what I think of the deal today. It matters 3 years from now what we think of the deal, as we learned with Matt Duchene when everybody liked that deal. And then everybody hated David Poile because they all hated that contract. Doesn't matter what I think about it today. But I think Barry Trotz is right. I am banking on Julien Brisebois' ego being the reason that you have Steven Stamkos. Now, I can't just sit here today and tell you he's wrong because I don't watch Tampa Bay Lightning hockey every night, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. I even had to sit there the other day and say, who did they play in the playoffs this year? By the way, it was the Florida Panthers. And I told you guys a story on Monday. One of my friends is a season ticket holder to the Lightning. She's a former Buccaneers cheerleader. We went to college together. And she told me she wouldn't have paid $5 million a year for Steven Stamkos at this point in his career. Everybody is entitled to an opinion. That's hers. And clearly, that's the same opinion that Julien Brisebois has. So I can't tell you today. I can't sit here and say he's wrong. But I think he is. I think this is an ego thing. We have talked about what I call MGS, my guy syndrome, where a coach gets to a team and they have an okay quarterback. They don't have Joe Burrow. They don't have Mahomes. They don't have Brady. New coach gets to a team and he looks at Russell Wilson, who's, not good, but probably not as bad as the guy they're going to go with, and says, nope, get him out of here because I want my guy. I got to have my guy. Athletic director takes over, fires the football coach. I got to have my guy. And even though Julien Brisebois has been in the Lightning organization for forever, the reality is he was never going to get credit for those teams that won as long as the Yzerman group was there. And the guy who highlights the Yzerman group is Steven Stamkos. It's as simple as that. And so when I look at Steven Stamkos scoring 40 goals, when I look at the fact that he plays, this isn't a guy who's playing 53 games, 48 games, 59 games. This is a guy who's playing 79 and 82. He plays. You couldn't offer him more than $3 million a year? You only offered him $3 million a year for 8 years. I'm not saying that 37 years old, Steven Stamkos is still going to be an elite level player, because I'm not anticipating that. But I will say this. At 37 years old, if he's still scoring 32 goals or 34 goals or something like that, and is still a weapon on the power play, and we've seen dudes. I was in Boston. I covered Yager when he was about 80. Some guys can play up into their 40s. He'd get another contract. And by then, it'll still be more than $3 million a year. That was a slap in the face offer. That was we really don't want you, but we can't go to the fans. We don't have the testes to go to the fans and say, we didn't really even try to bring Stamkos back. In fact, Brisebois got up there. He said he was disappointed they couldn't get a deal done with Stamkos. So I look at Tampa Bay, and again, I'm not farming their land. I don't watch their games. I don't care how they do this year. But again, I'm trying to figure out, did you get tires with no tread on them in Stamkos? Because again, they're only going to offer him $3 million. It's not like they went to him and said, hey man, we can only give you 6. The best we can do is 6. No, they said the best we can do is 3. Then they traded Mikhail Sergachev, and they turned around and they went and gave all the money to Jay Gensel. And I don't even think Jay Gensel's that good. But what is Jay Gensel to Julien Brisebois? He's my guy. I signed him. He didn't draft Stamkos. He didn't extend Stamkos. The guy holding up the cup was Stamkos. So what I really believe, and I think that, there's a conversation about Marchessault and what happened there in Vegas. I think that's an entirely different conversation than what happened in Tampa with Steven Stamkos. Somebody has to be right. Somebody has to be wrong. Either Barry Trotz is right and investing $8 million in a 33-year-old Stamkos is the right decision, or Brisebois is right and he is donezo. And it's one or the other. And I think Barry's right. And I think Barry's right because all the moves that they're making in Tampa scream my guy syndrome. Brisebois got up there at the press conference. And again, this entire press conference is about Stamkos. He's the most popular player in the history of the team. And the entire press conference gets up there and talks about, we got arguably the top guy on the market in Jake Gensel. The top guy? Really? Like, is Gensel that good? I mean, I guess he's time for the most money, so maybe he is. But I'm not a huge Jake Gensel guy. We brought back Ryan McDonough. We traded for Connor Gedicke. We added this. He's listing off all these things he did. I did this. My team. He even said, when they didn't come to a deal with Stamkos. Ian, can we play the cut of, if you can, the one from Brisebois and Stamkos? Listen to him say, I didn't get a deal done with Stamkos.
I'd like to start off by stating the obvious. I know that it is disappointing that I was not able to come to terms with Steven Stamkos on a contract to keep him within the organization. I know the fans are disappointed. I know Steven's disappointed. And I'm disappointed.
Okay.
Like everyone.
Again, he's sitting there saying I didn't get it done. My guy, my team, my forward, my guys, my coach, my power play, it's that small penis syndrome that is just rampant throughout sports. That everybody's got to be my guy. I am banking on that. That is why Tampa Bay did not want a guy who scored 40 goals for them last year, is the best player in the history of the organization, is their captain, would have taken a hometown discount, and is 33 years old, not 53 years old. Could be wrong. This could be Ryan Johansson, Matt Duchene all over again, albeit not with the same length. But this could be a disappointment. We've experienced this with Julio Jones and Jadeveon Clowney and, those kind of Titan signings. But I don't think it is. I'm on Barry's side on this one. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program if you want to weigh in. And I get $3 million, really. Willie actually texted me today, and he was like, I think it might be a cap. They're trying to outmaneuver the cap. And I'm like, maybe, but they just gave Jake Gensel $9 million, and they didn't try to outmaneuver any cap on that one. Now there's the other guy, Marchessault. Because Marchessault said something today. Great question asked by Adam Vingan. Marchessault said something today that, is kind of eye-opening, but also very encouraging as a Predator fan. And it doesn't really have anything to do with the Predators, but we'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. I believe that our new text line company still, again, it's all complicated. I don't totally understand it. But we've got the YouTube chat, so maybe we'll use that today as well. 615-737-1025. It is a Fireball Hot Take Friday on a Wednesday. Let's talk Fireball whiskey. That's right. It is America's holiday. And I know a lot of people got plans, whether you're going to be on the lake, whether you're going to be on the beach, whether you're going to be in the mountains, whether you're going to be with your family or your friends. There is no better way to tip back and celebrate the greatest country in the world. Look, we got our problems, but we're still the greatest country in the world. There's no better way to do it than with ice cold Fireball cinnamon whiskey. That's right. Ignite the night. Please do it responsibly and be 21 years or older. America, this Fireball is for you.
Kelly, I'm not sure if you heard Jonathan's comments this morning. He said that the team didn't try its best to keep him around. I'm not sure if you have any comments as far as to what he had said, but after everything that you just laid out, do you have any response to that?
I didn't, Danny. We were working all day. Couldn't be further from the truth, I guess is what I would say. Marshy's a fiery guy, so he would perhaps feel that way. I think anybody that's knows me, knows Marshy, our time together in this organization, the value we have on him, the respect we have for him, I would disagree with that.
That was Kelly McCrimmon, the general manager of the Vegas Golden Knights. And so there's kind of a war of words that's been going on between McCrimmon and Jonathan Marchessault. Jonathan Marchessault went on TSN right after he signed with the Predators, and he was like, yeah, I thought I was going back to Vegas, but then Vegas, I guess they didn't want me. And I guess they were offering me some kind of Fakakta contract, and Nashville was offering me, and Nashville wanted me, and that's where I wanted to be, and blah, blah, blah. So then McCrimmon's is asked about it, and McCrimmon says, yeah, no, that's not true. We offered. Now, again, remember, he said the data didn't back up a fifth year, but he said, no, we offered. We made that competitive offer. We put our stamp down. And so good job, Adam Vingan, today, as, again, Marchessault had his take. McCrimmon says he's not telling the truth. Well, now here's Marchessault on with Adam and Robbie. And did PK ask any questions today of Marchessault, by the way?
He did, actually, yeah.
Good for PK. And PK talking to Marchessault, and here's what Jonathan Marchessault said, again, in the warring of words between him and the Vegas Golden Knights.
How far off was the Golden Knights' best offer compared to the deal you signed with the Predators?
Well, obviously I want to move on and stop talking about it, right? But one of the things that I didn't like, it was not like a traditional offer. They offered me something that it's called deferral, and that's pretty far off to me. So the end result was probably around the same amount, but it was along the years. So that's what I didn't like, and I don't think I deserved that deal at the time, and that's why I was not the kind of guy that wanted to like explode the bank or anything like that. I wanted a good deal for a team that wants to win. And you know what? Like with Nashville is they didn't win yet, so they're eager to win. They want to win, and I think that's what I wanted to be part of.
There you go. We want to win. We don't want to almost win. But he said, no, there was something in this deal. They have deferrals. I heard that. Ian, I didn't even know you could do that in hockey.
Yeah, I saw a tweet from Bob McKenzie about
Put that out today.
Over the weekend. Yeah. Or earlier.
Oh, was it over the weekend?
I think it was over the weekend during the draft, around the draft.
So remember, deferred money, that's how Bobby Bonilla gets that $1.1 million every July 1st, is because he deferred money off of his contract when he was with the Mets, and so the Mets are still paying him. That's how the Dodgers gave Ohtani $700 million, but it's still only technically $400 million. Deferred money means, we'll pay you later, which means it doesn't have the same value, obviously, because of inflation and the time that you don't have the money. And again, I kind of understand it. I don't totally understand it. I don't even know how that works in hockey. Like, I don't know what deferred money does as far as the cap is concerned. Let me just say this. Leave it to the Vegas Golden Knights. If there is some kind of Fakakta loophole that they can climb through in order to circumvent the cap, the Vegas Golden Knights will find it. And to that, I salute you, because I want my team to do that kind of thing too. So I got to give him credit there. So I don't know exactly what this means between the offer, but he's telling you, no, they wanted to offer me some kind of weirdo deal, and I just wanted what I thought was right. Nashville offered me 5 years, and they want to win, and I want to be somewhere where someone wants me. I don't know who's right. I don't know who's wrong. I don't know who's telling the truth. I don't know where the wires got crossed up between Marchessault, who clearly wanted to go back to Vegas, and Vegas, who clearly wanted to bring Marchessault back. But guess what? He's got a chip on his shoulder now, doesn't he? He's still talking about it. He's saying, Adam, I don't want to talk about this anymore, but clearly I'm pissed about it, so I'm going to talk about it. Stamkos. totally disrespected by the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I think about motivation in sports. And I look at these two guys, and I'm like, both of them, Stamkos and Marchessault, even at their grandpa ages, they have a chip on their shoulder. How can two guys who have accomplished what they've accomplished and are getting paid the money they're getting paid, have gotten paid the money that they've been paid, how can they be motivated? Like, other than just the day-to-day grind to compete, which is important, and I'm sure both of those guys have it. But how can they be motivated? Stamkos has won 2 cups. Marchessault's won a cup and is the Conn Smythe. Like, these guys have checked a lot of the boxes. And then they got disrespected. And disrespect matters. Look at A.J. Brown that first year when he was in Philadelphia and he was out to prove the Titans wrong. And A.J. Brown played like the best wide receiver in the NFL. Year 2, everybody associated with A.J. Brown and the Titans other than the owner's been fired. And all of a sudden, now AJ's back to picking fights on the sideline, and he's mad on Twitter, and they're calling him out in the Philadelphia Inquirer, and the motivation of being slighted in life for successful people is very important. And it does nothing but help the Predators. The fact that, look, I figured Steven Stamkos, when he signs his contract, he's the pro's pro. He's going to show up every day ready to work no matter what anyways. But now it's personal. And if you don't think players need this kind of stuff, go watch the Michael Jordan documentary. Because clearly making crap up to motivate him worked for Michael. That's what the greats got to do. They don't have to manufacture anything. Tampa offered Stamkos $3 million a year. They didn't want him. Vegas tried to give Marchessault the deferred money. I'm not going to say they didn't want him, but they didn't want him bad enough. And now Kelly McCrimmons is saying, oh, he's lying. He's not telling the truth. He said, no, that's a lie. That's going to make people mad. And so as a Predators fan, none of this has anything to do with Predators, but I like it because now we're going to see guys that have been doubted, and that is a good thing. And I get thinking about the contracts that the Predators have signed over the years that haven't worked out. And it's really Johansson and Duchesne. Ellis got hurt. I never questioned whether or not Ryan Ellis cared, though he was part of my fat and happy brigade because as soon as he got paid, he went to crap. But Ryan Ellis got hurt. Victor Arvidsson was small, old, hurt. Those were different. The two that blew up were Johansson and Duchesne. Nobody ever really doubted him. You could argue that Johansson had been doubted by John Tortorella, who took the job in Columbus and didn't see eye to eye with Johansson because Johansson's not a grinder, because Johansson doesn't live the NHL, and he didn't like it. But he went somewhere where everybody, oh, he's the number one center. He's our guy. Give him the contract. There was nothing to play for with Duchesne. And these are two guys that, no disrespect, but the core inside for those two men, it doesn't burn with the desire to win. It just doesn't. And that's fine. But if I'm giving you an 8-year contract or a 7-year contract and I'm paying you a bunch of money to lead my team, I'm going to need you to do those things. Duchesne was the top free agent on the market the year he came out. He and Artemi Panarin. And so I got to tell you, like where I sit, I mean, I am loving this drama of what Julien Brisebois did or didn't offer Steven Stamkos, or what Kelly McCrimmon did or didn't offer deferred money, which again, I didn't even know existed in the NHL, deferred money and cap circumvention and everything else for Marchessault, because those guys got something to prove. Because even though after they signed, everybody around the league was like, whoa, look at Nashville, they know deep down inside their own teams didn't want them. And that can be a very, very, very dangerous thing for the other guy. It's good for you. 615-737-1025. We'll get to some of your thoughts on the YouTube chat and more. 615-737-1025. Plus, I do feel like what's happened to Stamkos actually happened around here too. touch on that quickly next, and then what are your thoughts? Join us tomorrow, July 4th, at the 18th Annual Music City Hot Chicken Festival at East Park. It's a spectacular day packed with live music, contests, and, of course, hot chicken. It's free, so bring the whole family. Discover more at hotchickenfestival.com.
I understand that Steven signing with the Nashville Predators today is going to overshadow any of the changes that have taken place within our organization in the last few weeks, in the last few days. But as I look ahead, I really like and am excited by what I see as taking shape for our organization going forward. Today, we signed Jake Guentzel, a 29-year-old star player in his prime, arguably the most coveted free agent on the unrestricted free agent market this summer. A few weeks ago, we brought back Ryan McDonough, who is still one of the best defensive defensemen and leaders in the NHL and who's under contract for 2 years. Over the weekend, we acquired JJ Moser, who just turned 24 this month, already a top 4 defenseman in the NHL, and I don't think he's even entered his prime. We acquired Connor Geekie, 20-year-old entering the professional ranks this season. He's got 3 years of entry-level contract. He's got size. He plays a premium position. He's without a doubt the highest profile we've had in terms of highest profile prospect we've had for a number of years here. So when I look at the end result of all that, I believe that we are a better defensive team and a deeper team, and that makes us a better team in the short term.
That was Julien Brisebois, the general manager of the Tampa Bay Lightning, saying, hey, I know we didn't bring back Stamkos, but we got Jake Gensel and we got Ryan McDonough. He's one of the best defensive defensemen in the NHL. By the way, I've watched Ryan McDonough the last 2 years. I like McDonough. McDonough's solid player. Solid player. Not sure that I'm like, Ryan McDonough! I mean, if I had my choice between Mikhail Sergachev or Ryan McDonough, I'm taking Mikhail Sergachev at 26 years old. That's just me. But it's obvious, again, when you read the Chris Johnson article in The Athletic and you see that the best offer to Stamkos was a 3-year deal at an AAV, an 8-year deal at an AAV of $3 million. They didn't want him. Now, they had to make an offer because he's Steven Stamkos, but they didn't want him. And it kind of reminds me of how the Titans handled Derrick Henry. And I don't know if the Titans were right with the way they did handle Derrick Henry or they didn't. Now, the difference is Stamkos absolutely wanted to go back to Tampa Bay. Derrick Henry made it obvious in his interview on Bussin' with the Boys that he was ready to move on somewhere where he thought he could win. You know, the Titans were rebuilding, kind of blowing things up. And Derrick probably was like, probably go somewhere else. Stamkos obviously wanted to stay in Tampa, so that's a small difference. But the way that they treated Stamkos, I think, is the same way that the Titans treated Derrick Henry. They didn't want Derrick Henry anymore. And I don't know if that's an Amy thing. I don't know if that's a Brian Callahan thing. I don't know if that's a Rand Carthon thing. I don't know if that's a Chad Brinker and his AI cancer curing model that you said, don't sign Derrick Henry. It might have been the same thing that said, don't sign Steven Stamkos. That said, hey, go sign Jake Gensel. Don't sign Steven Stamkos. But I'm not convinced that moving on from Henry is the best thing for the Titans. Even if they want to change the offense or whatever it is. Because Derrick Henry's still a really good player. And Derrick Henry, carried a big stick in that locker room. And for a young quarterback, we talk about the serial winners that Barry Trotz loves so much. Derrick Henry is a pro's pro. And we all know that. But I think the Titans, through their actions, through the reporting of Mike Florio, who said Mike Vrabel put his foot down last year at the trade deadline and said, we're not trading Derrick Henry. I think the Titans wanted to build a team without Derrick Henry, regardless of what Derrick Henry wanted. Just like I think Julien Brisebois wanted to build a team without Steven Stamkos. He wants to do it so he can say, I did it. Derrick Henry got like $8 million from the Ravens. Tony Pollard got $8 million from you. It's almost the same, right? Jake Gensel got $9 million from Tampa. Nobody would say that Jake Gensel will have the caliber career that Steven Stamkos has. That when it's all said and done, nobody's going to say, who's the better player, Gensel or Stamkos? Just like nobody's going to say, who's a better player when it's all said and done, Tony Pollard or Derrick Henry? But there's an argument that can be made that at 26 years old, Tony Pollard is a better player right now than Derrick Henry. I'm not the one making it, but there could be an argument. I think this kind of reminds me, again, we talked about MGS, my guy syndrome. And I think as long as Derrick Henry's on the Titans, it's Derrick Henry's team. As long as Steven Stamkos is on the Lightning, it's Steven Stamkos' team. And I think the Titans, just like Tampa Bay, hey, you know what? Let's build a team on our guys. And then we can say, I did that. And that's what I think the Titans did. Kind of reminds me of Jerry Krause and Jerry Reinsdorf. And Jerry Krause wants to get rid of Phil Jackson. I don't care if you go 82-0, Phil. You're not coming back. My coach. Doesn't want Michael and Scotty and Rodman. And no. Let's not run that back. Let's try it out with Ron Harper, Kukoc, and a bunch of nobodies and see how that works. But that's what happens with these egos in sports is you all of a sudden tell yourself, you know what? We don't need Steven Stamkos anymore. We need Jake Gensel. That's who we need. We don't need Derrick Henry anymore. We need Tony Pollard. That's who we need. My issue with Pollard, I'm fine with Pollard. My issue with Pollard is I don't understand why you paid $8 million for a running back when you drafted a running back in the 3rd round last year, but I digress. On the YouTube chat, didn't take long, Ian. Somebody says, you love Barry Trotz's moves, but not Rand Carthon's moves. Gotcha.
Oh, boy.
Who's playing right tackle for the Titans this year, guys? Trevor came on the show yesterday. He says that he doesn't think that the right tackle or right guard is on the team yet. That is concerning. I mean, I liked the moves that made sense where they went out and they paid. You got to overpay a little bit in free agency. The moves they made where they overpaid solid players at positions they had to fill, i.e. Ridley or Cushenberry, I'm fine with those moves. Don't hear me bitching about Chidobe Awuzie. I mean, is Chidobe Awuzie a $12 million corner at this point in his career? Probably not. But you do not hear me complaining about that. It's the ones where they take on L'Jarius Sneed's bad knees and then tell everybody, no, his knees are fine. That's when I'm like, okay, now I feel like I'm being lied to. Kind of like the Lakers getting up in front of everybody saying, Bronny earned this 4-year guaranteed contract that no 55th pick has ever gotten before. Okay. Talking about circumventing the cap. That is some cap circumvention right there, that whole Bronny James thing. I don't know. The NBA is such a joke. Somebody says, Tampa gave the exact same contract Stamkos got to Hedman and also gave Gensel $9 million. Saying they tried to circumvent the cap is a nice way of saying they lowball Stamkos and he knew he wouldn't take it. I actually, the circumventing of the cap. Now, Willie said that, that the long-term deal for the $3 million for 8 years on Stamkos, he lumped that in with the Marchessault thing. I don't think that is circumventing the cap. Just saying like, hey, we're going to give you a long-term deal. And 6 years from now, when you're a grandpa like Shea Weber and you're going from team to team to team to pay you $3 million just because somebody's cheap and wants to up it to the cap floor, but they don't actually want to have a good team, that's different than what this deferred money for Jonathan Marchessault sounds like. This, again, I am aware of deferred money in baseball. Not sure I've ever heard about deferred money in hockey and that affecting the cap to where all of a sudden Vegas can get a lower. I've never heard of that before. Now, I'm not an expert on the CBA in the NHL. And, if anybody knows how to circumvent the cap, it's Vegas. Like, it's Vegas. Somebody says, Steve says, Jared, who is playing goalie for Barry Trotz? A goalie that can't win in the playoffs. You unfairly hate on Rand all the time. You've got to show Rand the respect you show Barry. No, I don't. Because Rand Carthon lies to people and Barry Trotz tells the truth. I mean, again, you talk about respect. To me, when Rand Carthon gets up there and says the ball didn't bounce your way, after the season that we had to watch last year, he is insulting you because he knows they didn't lose because the ball didn't bounce their way. He knows they lost because Andre Dillard sucked. Now, who signed Andre Dillard? He's not going to say that. So he just says, Mike Vrabel, the coach we just fired, he says, has a funny saying, and says the ball's not round. And this year, the ball didn't bounce our way. We lost 7 one-score games. We were right there, guys. Now, you all watched the season. Did you think that? Of course not. Instead, Barry Trotz comes on the show and is like, yeah, I'm signing Saros. I'm signing Saros. I'm going to spend big in free agency. We're in on the big names. Where he tells the truth all the time. That's the difference. So you tell me I've got to show him respect. Barry comes on the show, tells the truth, even if I disagree with it. I've told Barry my opinion on the air sometimes. Rand gets on there and tells you that injuries were the problem with the offensive line last year. Rand tells you they knew that the Falcons were going to draft Michael Penix. Barry Trotz doesn't make stuff up like that. I mean, if anything, last Monday, a week ago, Monday's interview with Barry is exactly the difference between the two. Barry came on and was like, remember, Rand was like, we can't spend all that money at one time. We got to spend wisely. We're going to have to, what they do, spend all the money, which is good. But again, it's not telling the truth. Barry tells truth. Don't tell me that these two are the same. They are not the same. Barry Trotz exceeded expectations in year one. Rand Carthon signed Andre Dillard. Chris Sanders joins us next on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Let's talk Fireball Sin Whiskey. You know Fireball Sin Whiskey is the celebratory drink of all time. That's right. And we are celebrating America this week. And the way that we celebrate America in my household is with Fireball whiskey. Goes down so smooth and it tastes so great. If you're on the lake, if you're on the beach, if you're out in the mountains, if you're hanging out with your family, if it's just a backyard barbecue, make it a Fireball barbecue. That's right. Fireball Sin Whiskey night to night. Please do it responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy. Sounds Baseball is on 94.9 The Fan. The Sounds take on Memphis. First pitch at 6 o'clock. Sounds Baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks Family Leisure, 5 Points Roofing, Caldwell Vet Clinic, and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. So, I have started following on Instagram, T'Vondre Sweat, because I just kind of keeping an eye that the players are on their little vacation. Training camp starts in 20 days. And I said this with Trevor yesterday. I said that in 20 days, we will know if T'Vondre Sweat is capable of being an NFL player or not. Now, I don't know how good he'll be, but in 20 days, we'll know. Because if he shows up and doesn't pass a conditioning test, or he's still injured, or whatever it may be, that'll tell us what we need to know when all those league executives said, I don't know if I trust this kid. He was 380 at Texas. Chris Sanders joins us now on the program. Chris, 20 days from reporting to training camp, how nervous are you about T'Vondre Sweat?
You know, I'm kind of 50-50, and the reason why I'm 50-50 is because we didn't see him in OTAs, we didn't see him in mandatory camp. But I think the people that's in his camp is going to make sure he's in shape and things like that, because he's got to understand, especially as a rookie, you got to come in here and make an impact, because if he comes in here and plays well, look at how he makes the defense better. He makes Jeffrey Simmons better, makes the secondary better, because the impact that he brings to the team. So, you know, I just hope and I pray that he doesn't come in here out of shape and just kind of, you know, not passing a physical and not doing all that crazy stuff. But if he comes in here ready, I think the defense is going to be great instantly because of his impact.
What if he doesn't come in here ready? Then how are you going to react?
Oh, it's going to be disappointing, because we got to understand, you know, being a professional is not just finishing a sprint. Being a professional is doing everything right. So if I know that I worked my whole life to get there, my whole life to get into the NFL, why would I stop working? So I just think that if he has that tenacity, he has that dog, I think he's going to do everything in his power to make him get there. But if he doesn't get there, you know, I'm going to be very disappointed, because this is a great opportunity for him to excel in the NFL.
I was listening to Bill Polian talk about the July 4th holiday, and he said as a former general manager, there were two things that really stood out to him about the July 4th holiday. The number one is July 4th apparently is the day that if anybody's going to get in trouble, that's the day that they are most likely to get in trouble. You go back to when JPP blew off his hand with a firework or whatever it was.
I know.
But the second thing he said was July 4th is kind of the moment for these players where, okay, now it's time to turn our attention to camp. Now it's time to make sure that we're in shape for camp, how did you approach kind of the pre-July 4th part of the offseason and then the post-July 4th when you played?
You know, my regimen was the same because it was in my DNA. I'm going to work hard even if it's a holiday. So what I did is I knew that when I came in camp, especially as a rookie, Jared, is I had to prove myself. I had to prove myself to my coaches. I had to prove myself to, my players, all those things. So I came in there ready. So it didn't matter if I had time off. I know everybody has these 6 weeks off where they want to relax. But as a football player, you can't relax. There's things you can do. You can go work out before you go through all the festivities. So you just got to make it important to you. And if you make it important to you, then you can have your fun, but also make sure you're prepared to get ready for camp.
I have seen a lot of stories about Will Levis working on his mechanics. Apparently there are, his base, and it's something he wants to work on. And I actually thought that, I thought the Titans did a disservice, probably in large part. This is probably Mike Vrabel's fault more than anybody else's.
Right.
But I thought that they did a disservice to Levis by drafting him and then not coming out immediately and just saying Tannehill's the quarterback and we don't expect Levis to play this year, just to set the expectations. Because I really thought that was something last year. They really needed to drill down were the mechanics on Levis. But it is a new coaching staff. I wonder this. When you hear that the quarterback is really focused on his mechanics right now, what do you make of it?
I mean, that's a good thing, but I think it's more than just mechanics. I mean, everybody knows the 3-step drop, 5-step drop, going through all this stuff. This is what I want to see out of Will Levis, is understanding the coverage, anticipating what's going to happen. Give you a perfect example. If you know Brady was a guy that anticipated things that were going to happen by watching film and doing the thing that he's supposed to. I'll give you a perfect example. Say if they're in cover 2 and the safety's kind of moving around a little bit, he knows that safety's got to get somewhere, and he knows right away where the ball's got to go. I understand that Will Levis has a strong arm. I understand he's working on mechanics, but I want to see him take it to the next level and anticipating that if it's this coverage, I know exactly where I'm going, because everybody knows he's a specimen. I mean, he's big, he's strong, he's physical. He can do those things, but I want to see when it's cover 2 or cover 3 and it switches coverages on him and he makes a proper read. That's what I'm looking for out of Will Levis.
Former Titans receiver Chris Sanders is with us on the program. This is Will Levis' second year. He's only got 9 NFL games under his belt. I do wonder, where should he be when he shows up to camp? He said before the offseason ended, he said, my whole goal is to learn the playbook so well that I know it like the back of my hand and I can run the meetings. Now, that sounds great, but you and I both know that's not feasible for a second-year quarterback in the NFL to be able to run the meetings. I don't care who you are. Like maybe Manning, but he's not Manning. So I ask you this, as far as where he is, from a development standpoint, from an understanding standpoint, from a, let's say you're one of his veteran receivers like Ridley or Hopkins. Where are you expecting him to be when training camp starts, and where do you expect him to go from there?
I just want to see improvement. I mean, because if you look at, last year, in my opinion, and I might be wrong, but I still see him as a rookie because he didn't come in as a starter. He had to, earn the will to be a starter. So I still think that he's still got a lot to learn. But the way he's approaching things now, the way he's handling things, the way he's getting guys together and working out, he should have an explosive year because he has that want to. And I know when a guy has that want to, he's going to do everything in his power to be one of the best, quarterbacks in the league. I'm not saying he's there yet. I know there's a lot of things that he has to work on, but he understands it's a process. He understands that it starts with him. If you look at this whole offense, they got some weapons. They got Calvin Ridley, they got Tyler Boyd, they got Spears, they got, Wiley, they got all these guys. But if the quarterback position doesn't work, then it all fails. So he understands that if I do well and I play well and I protect the football and I lead this team can be something special as opposed to being something bad as last year.
So ESPN.com came out today with a 2025 mock draft, and they have the Titans picking 4th. Now, it's done by the ESPN analytics or whatever it may be. The Arizona Cardinals won 4 games last year, and they picked 4th.
Oh, man.
And the Titans in this mock draft did not go quarterback. But I ask you this question, which is, if the Titans are picking fourth in this upcoming draft, don't you think they'll be moving on at quarterback?
I think so. I mean, you have to, because if you look at all the weapons you got, everybody wants to build your team around a quarterback. Will Levis has all the weapons. I mean, they're building up an offensive line by getting Cushionberry and some other guys, and then they went and got some skill guys with Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, and Hop. So you have all the pieces. So now we always talk about this cliche: the ball's in your court. The ball's in Levis' court to say, you know what, I got all the weapons. It's up to me. So now, if you have everything and you present it to him, and he goes out there and doesn't play well, it's hard to swallow, but I think that you have to maybe go on and look for another quarterback, because you gave him the opportunity, you gave him the weapons, you gave him the coaching staff, you gave him everything that he needs to succeed. Now it's on him.
Okay, now I'm going to put you on the hot seat on this one.
Oh, my God.
So let's say that's what happens. And again, I hope it's the opposite. Sure. I hope we walk out of this season thinking that he's Dan Marino. But let's say all the pundits are right, we're all wrong. Would you rather the Titans go spend a boatload of money to go get Dak Prescott, who I think will be a free agent after this year? Like, I do not think Dallas will extend him. So I think Dak will hit the market. Would you pay? And we're talking like $60 million a year. So would you pay the money to bring in Dak, who I don't know if you win a Super Bowl with him or not, or would you want to go the young guy route again?
That's hard. I would go with the young guy route. And the reason why I go with the young guy route, because this is my opinion. I respect Dak's game, but he still hasn't won the big one. I mean, we get to the situation where, you know, during the season, you know, he's a world beater, but then all of a sudden you get in the playoffs and all of a sudden you lead your team to victory. So I would just go to young route. I will find the most talented, you know, quarterback in the draft or wherever and build him up, as opposed to going with Dak. It can't get you to the next level. I hate to say that because I think he's a phenomenal talent, but there's guys that have the it factor and there's guys that don't have the it factor. And I think that, you know, when you have the it factor, you raise your team another level, you go win a championship. And I think with Dallas, he had the pieces, but I just think that he's not that guy.
I'm not a Dak fan. I mean, but at the same time, you know what though? And you know as well as I do that, like, if my choice is Dak or no quarterback, I mean, I'd rather have Dak. But if my choice, you know, but like, do I think he can win the Super Bowl with Dak as quarterback? I don't think he can.
See that's what it is. You know, that was a knock on John Elway before you know, he won a couple of Super Bowls. I mean, that's exactly the same thing. Now it took him to the echelon. They're like, oh, you're a great quarterback during the season, but then you can't win in the playoffs or you can't win a Super Bowl. But once John Elway won the Super Bowl, then there's no question. So I hope and I pray that Dak goes to a team, and maybe Dallas over here. I don't know where it is, but if he goes and wins a Super Bowl, then now you put him in the echelon of being a great quarterback.
Chris Sanders, as always, joining us on a Wednesday. Chris, you have a wonderful, wonderful holiday.
You too, brother.
We will talk soon.
Love you, brother. Appreciate you. Bye-bye.
Yep, Chris Sanders joining us on the program. He knows I love him too. By the way, speaking of Chris, so I pay every month for YouTube. I know it sounds crazy because YouTube's free, but because I'm on it so much as far as like cutting clips and press conferences and whatnot, like I paid for the premium. I know it sounds stupid, but like I fell asleep the other day watching YouTube videos or something. And because my algorithm is all Titans and Predators and Atlanta Braves baseball and whatnot, Ian, I woke up in the middle of the night and there was a Houston Oiler, San Francisco 49er game from 1996 on. Steve Young got hurt. Chris Chandler got hurt. The Oilers blew the game at the very end. And Jerry Rice was the only good player on the field. Other than Chris, don't want to throw Chris away. Jerry Rice, I mean, Jeff Brom, my coach, was quarterback in the 49ers.
Man, throwback.
I mean, it was something. And I just watched it, and they lost. They had to lead the whole game. And then T.O. scored a touchdown at the very end with about 2 minutes left. And I just thought, man, I bet Floyd was so miserable after they lost that one. Little side conversation, I know. All right, since you sat through that little conversation, I'm going to give you something in a second. But coming up next, everybody tells me how great the Titans offseason was. But then why is it not moving needles? And what the real purpose of all these moves should be. We'll get to that coming up next. Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you'll win a pair of tickets to see Sebastian Maniscalco at Bridgestone Arena on July 21st. Good luck on that. That again is 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So it's hilarious. You know, we start the show talking about the moves that the Predators have made. You know, not, oh, this happened, that. No. We start the show talking about the moves the Predators make, and the entire YouTube chat is all people yelling back and forth about Rand Carthon. It's amazing. Jared, why don't you get this excited about the Titans moves? I was excited about Lloyd Cushenberry and Shinobi Awuzie, which I thought was a good move, and Calvin Ridley, which I thought was a good move. And I'm just not sold on, banking on L'Jarius Sneed's knees. I think Mason Rudolph stinks as a backup quarterback. I'd much rather have a right tackle than a second $8 million running back, and so on and so forth. But everybody wants to throw the Titans a parade, and I am not going to be the one to stop it. So Marcus Spears put out his top 5 most improved teams this offseason on ESPN. Number 1, the Chicago Bears. Number 2, the Jets, which is a little fascinating that, you do play the Bears in week 1, and you do play the Jets in week 2. And Marcus Spears has the Titans at number 3.
3, I'm going to Tennessee Titans. This was kind of a under-the-radar acquisition this year. Calvin Ridley to the Tennessee Titans, to me, is going to be huge. L'Jarius Sneed, as we know, a physical lockdown corner. I know my dog RC love that. But the explosiveness of Tony Pollard as well. This team got very explosive offensively with a young quarterback in Will Levis, who they're trying to see if he's the guy. Can he mature? He got a big arm. He can push it down the field.
Okay. He says right there, this team got explosive on offense, and Ridley will help. Pollard, again, I think the explosion at running back probably should be more Spears than it is Pollard, but that's just me. I mean, again, I hear you, but I really look at this and I think to myself 2 things about what he said. Number 1, he says they need to figure out if Will Levis is the guy, which many of you have said. And I'm not sure I actually think that's what those moves are for. More on that in a second. The other thing is this, and I'm not saying that Marcus Spears speaks for all of ESPN, but if the Titans had such a great offseason, like everybody keeps telling me they did, like Marcus Spears wants to rank them and say they did. Now, again, I think they went out and got some good players, but I still don't know who the right tackle is. I still don't. How are they replacing Danico Autry? I have no idea. That's 10 sacks that's out the building. How do you replace it? I don't know. But then why don't these people ever think that the Titans are going to win more? I hear, the Titans have so improved this offseason. How many games are going to win? 6. Okay. Well, that's a good job doing all that improving. And that is the sentiment that is emanating from outside of this city. Inside of this city, a lot of people want to go ahead and make Will Levis a franchise quarterback. Inside this city, a lot of people want to start planning for the parade that is inevitable will be held, after all the money the Titans spend in free agency and all of that. But I'm trying to figure out if we're going to rank the Titans as one of the most improved teams, how come the Titans don't win more? And then the second thing is this. He said in that cut, they need to figure out if Will Levis is the guy. And people talk about, we need to figure out if Levis is the guy. That's why I would understand you have to get him a wide receiver who is actually good. Ridley is. Unlike Traylon Burks, who might be good, but so far hasn't been good yet. I understand, hey, we need more options in the passing game. Now, again, a second running back, I'm not so sure you absolutely need when you don't have a real tight end or a right guard, but that's a different discussion. But I actually don't think the money the Titans spent with a center, with a receiver, on a defense, albeit while letting Danico Autry walk, I do not feel as if it's about seeing what you have in Levis as much as I think it is about nurturing Levis to the point that he can be successful. Because again, I think a lot of fans are like, we need to know if Levis is the guy. And I think you're in the right church, but I think you're in the wrong pew. Because the mentality should be, what do they need to do to give this kid, and he is a kid. I sat down with him at the Super Bowl, and I'm like, this guy, he is a baby. What do they need to do to give him the best chance to be the best he can be? I know it's easy to say Mac Jones sucks, but Mac Jones made the Pro Bowl as a rookie, and then Bill Belichick decided to give him no help at receiver and make Matt Patricia his offensive coordinator. I'm not saying that Mac Jones, if he had had Bill Walsh as his head coach, with Andy Reid as his offensive coordinator, I'm not saying that he would have turned into Joe Montana. I'm just saying I don't think Mac Jones had much of a chance. So the question when it comes to developing a young quarterback for me has got to be, what are you doing to give this kid the best chance to succeed? If I were to have a child, I wouldn't look at that newborn baby and say, okay, let's see if you can be a Rhodes Scholar. My approach would be, what do I need to do as a parent in order to give my child the best chance to become a Rhodes Scholar? And I am convinced that quarterbacks in this league, outside of a Peyton Manning or a Joe Burrow or something like that, I'm convinced that they're nurtured by their teams. I think a lot of us, just assume a quarterback gets drafted and, okay, son, it's your team. And that's how you end up with Bryce Young, a good prospect, bombing out that first year in Carolina with no offensive line and no receivers. So when I think about all the moves the Titans have made, to me, this isn't about seeing if Levis is the guy. This is about giving Levis the best chance to improve so that he can one day become the guy. Some guys you could put right there with the greatest show on turf, Rams, and it does not matter who the coach is. That guy is never, ever going to be any good no matter what. That is inevitable. Like, there are some guys that just flat out suck. I think we can all agree. But Levis isn't that. So when I look at Levis, and everybody says he's a smart kid, he got a good score on the S2 in terms of the recognition and cognition and everything else, I'm saying, what have you done enough to give this kid the best opportunity to succeed? And I have a hard time getting there when I don't have faith at right tackle, don't have faith at right guard, and don't have faith at tight end. But you got an $8 billion running back, all right, to go with the other running back you drafted in the third round. It makes me a little uncomfortable. Again, let's not put this all on this kid to say, okay, take this team to the promised land. Let's put this on this team to say, hey, put this kid in the best position to have success. And I'll say this, hiring an offensive guru coach is a step in the right direction. Hiring Bill Callahan as the offensive line coach is a step in the right direction. Signing a reliable receiver who I don't think is really a number one in the NFL, but better than anything else you could have gotten. I think that's probably a step in the right direction. Drafting a tackle is probably a step in the right direction. This isn't about figuring out if Levis can be the guy. This is about you doing your best in order to see if you can unlock that potential. Or maybe it's not there. But this idea of him having to do it, no. You've got to meet him more than halfway. You've got to bring him up through it. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Add that to the list. 615-737-1025. And now there's a lot of talk about Will Levis's mechanics. Will said, I'm going to focus on my mechanics. And a former NFL quarterback, Jim Miller, says what he believes Levis is actually trying to do by working on his mechanics and what it means. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
I love everything that I do with Rob, and I feel like at the same time, like I'm able to take all those teachings and apply it to my own kind of process and mechanics, how I feel that suits me. So being able to take those teachings and then also be able to talk to Callie and take some of his opinions and a couple of considerations that he has and implementing those. It's just a mix of both. And then it's on me to decide what's best for me and what's most comfortable for me. And, both sides are in on it in terms of their awareness.
That was Will Levis talking about his mechanics with his guru coach and his real coach. And it's like, hey, we want to get my mechanics down. We want to work. And I believe they talked a lot about working on his base and what he was trying to do. So there was a lot of talk nationally about Will Levis and his mechanics. I heard Todd Haley weighing in on it, the former coach, today, and he was like, yeah, that's great. I mean, as long as they're not sitting there telling him what to do on third down, it's fine, working on mechanics, and quarterbacks are always working on mechanics or whatever. But Levis was talking about wanting to work on his base. And former NFL quarterback Jim Miller, who spent 6 years in the NFL as a quarterback in Pittsburgh and Chicago, hosts a show now on SiriusXM NFL Radio. And he said, this is what I think when Levis talks about working on his mechanics. This is what I think he actually means.
When he says he wants to be more stationary, this is what it means to me. You want to have calm feet as a quarterback. For example, if you were to watch Zach Wilson drop back last year, it almost looked manic, didn't it? It kind of looked this manic. But you want to be able to drop back, calm feet in the pocket. They shouldn't be moving or jittery or anything like that. Think of Tom Brady, how calm his drops were, or even Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, his feet are moving if he's going to take off, but they're calm in the pocket in order to be in balance to have an accurate throw. And last year, that's what I noticed about Will Levis. Is like even in that big game that they won over Miami, his feet kind of were a little bit nervous. And I think that's what affects your completion percentage. He was only at 58%, which is, a couple of ticks off of 60. But like you said, a lot of guys are close to 70 now.
Okay. Basically, Levis's mechanics are designed for him to calm down. I noticed it in his third start in the NFL. That when they started to get behind a little bit against Tampa Bay, Levis decided, I gotta go win the game. That's not how it works. And I remember the interception he threw against the Texans when they played the JV Texans and they lost, I think Case Keenum played quarterback and Devin Singletary ran the ball up the middle for about 200 yards, it felt like. And, it was really, I think, kind of the moment of truth for Vrabel when they lost that game in overtime to the Texans without half their team. But in that game, there was an interception he threw. He was on the run. He rolled out to the right, and there were two Texan defenders, one with DeAndre Hopkins and one with Treylon Burks. And as he rolled out and the play developed, two Texan defenders stayed with DeAndre Hopkins. Treylon Burks was wide open down the field. Now, there's no guarantee that if he'd thrown the ball in the direction of Burks, that Burks would have caught it, because as we learned last year, Burks does have a hard time catching the ball. But if there's nobody on Burks and he's streaking towards the end zone for a touchdown, and there are two people on Hopkins, I would prefer the young quarterback throw the ball down the field to the guy who's wide open and is probably going to score a touchdown. He didn't. He threw it to Hopkins because that's his default, right? When in doubt, throw it to DeAndre. It got intercepted, and the game totally changed. And I said to everybody, I go, that's a big moment for him. But what's a real big moment for him is what happens the next time. Because there will be a next time. Does his mind slow down enough for him to see what's happening and say to himself, as this is all going down, hey, I remember this the last time this happened. I remember this. And I remember that when that defender goes with DeAndre, I have plenty of time. I don't have to rush it. I'm okay. It's all right back here. And I can look and use my eyes and find Burks and throw the touchdown and win the game. That's why he's working on his mechanics. because the game has got to slow down for him. When he got drafted, Rick Neuheisel, the old coach who, now does a lot of college stuff, but he was doing a draft show on Sirius XM. And Rick Neuheisel said that what he would do if he was coaching Will Levis is he would take his cleats off. Because when you're a young quarterback and you're wearing turf shoes, you're wearing, regular sneakers out there, as opposed to your spikes, you have to slow down to keep yourself from slipping. Think about yourself. I don't want to say walking on ice, but think about yourself walking on a surface that isn't totally stable as compared to you wearing just your regular shoes and walking on gravel or asphalt. A flat asphalt as compared to, say, walking on, something that's uneven and you're kind of taking it slower. They put these guys in their shoes so that it slows them down. That's what Levis is working on. That's what Jim Miller's telling you he's working on. Now, this takes me back to last year. And you can't fix something that you may have already broken. And it's not worth crying over spilt milk, but it is worth recognizing the mistake I think the Titans made. Last year, when things weren't going well, I argued, people said, I remember Robbie saying it, you got to find out what you have in Levis. And I thought to myself, they're finding that out every day. Like the way he interacts with his teammates in the lunchroom, they're learning about him. The way he comes into the meeting room and the notes he takes and what he takes from the meeting room and takes out to the practice field, they're learning about it. When you say they need to see what they have in Levis, you're saying I need to see what they have in Levis, because you don't get to see him go from the meeting room to the practice field and how he performs on the practice field and his attitude and the relationship he has with his teammates and the coaching staff. You don't see all of that. So when you're looking at a lost season and there's a young quarterback sitting there, again, I'm talking about what Robbie said, you sit there and say, they need to see what they have, but you're really saying you need to see what they have. And I, until the Atlanta game, sat there and cautioned everybody. I said, be careful with this young kid, because you threw Malik out there before he was ready, and there's no indication that Malik ever would have been good no matter how much time they gave him. But the way they treated Malik never, ever, ever gave him an opportunity to succeed. I begged him, after watching Malik in training camp, where I knew Malik was not ready, I said, you got to get a backup in here. You got to go get Nate Sudfeld or somebody like that, because Malik's not ready. And no, he's ready. And all of a sudden, Malik's out there on Sunday Night Football. And once you lose that confidence, it's hard to get back. When we talk about the mechanics, and again, I'm not so sure how sold I was on the last coaching staff to be able to get Levis, to get his mechanics correct. But I was looking at mechanics last year and saying, they need to be hammering down his mechanics every day. I can't look at him and tell you, oh yeah, these mechanics are good or these mechanics are bad. I'm not trained in that. I don't know how to do that. I can tell you what's good on the radio. I cannot tell you what a quarterback's mechanics are. But I knew that he needed that kind of red shirt year to watch how Ryan Tannehill operates, to sit behind Tannehill and not be pressured, and I mean pressured both literally, out there behind that terrible offensive line, but more so figuratively, with the idea of having to carry the franchise on his shoulders when he runs out the tunnel, which with that terrible team he had last year, that's exactly what was going to happen. And so now I feel like the Titans and Levis, they're trying to make up for a mistake that happened last year, which was, it's not his fault that he had to play. And once he had the Atlanta game, you can't take him off the field. Once your young quarterback that you drafted in the second round, that you've circled and highlighted and said, this is our guy, once he goes out there and throws for 4 touchdowns in an NFL game and proves he can play in the NFL, unless you're 8-2 and the guy he's replacing is coming back next week and it's a good, once that happens, the horse has left the barn. He's the quarterback. But up until that point, I was very nervous about what putting him behind that line last year was going to do to him. Because I knew as a young quarterback, he needed to learn the game. Tom Brady's talked about how important sitting behind Drew Bledsoe for a year was for him. Patrick Mahomes with Alex Smith, Aaron Rodgers, those years under Brett Favre. I mean, this is a cut from February of 2023 that I had in the archives that I want to play for you because this is so important to me about how instead of, like I said, instead of drafting the quarterback and saying, are you the guy, Johnny? It's more so, let's draft Johnny because we are going to build him up into the guy. And this is what Rick Spielman said about his evaluation. He was the Vikings GM at the time. His evaluation of Mahomes and what has happened to Mahomes since he's been drafted.
Yeah, no, I went back to where we had him coming out of college. Now, things change. As you can see, Patrick Mahomes would probably be the top of the list if you'd redraft like a lot of the experts do. But coming out, Patrick Mahomes still had a lot of holes in his game. There was no question about the arm talent, but he was a little bit of a gunslinger and questioned in that air raid offense whether he would fit into an NFL scheme. And I thought Andy Reid, Kansas City Chiefs, did a phenomenal job adjusting their schemes to make him who he is today.
I mean, he's telling you, I had my concerns. There were holes in his game, but Andy Reid, of course, great coach. Andy Reid has adjusted the team and probably adjusted Mahomes into what he is today. And so I'm not here to cry over spilt milk because I think last year was almost a lost year for Will Levis outside of the fact that, you know, now he knows what playing in the NFL is like a little bit. But I think he's kind of playing catch up. I think that there's a little bit of this that I was really worried about last year of like, hey, you know, running him out there before he's ready. And I mean, I think that there is something to that. Now I feel like with the work that they have from a mechanic standpoint, those are things that they should have been drilling down with him last year.
Is there a worry that he's an older prospect as a quarterback and he's still working on his mechanics and base?
I think that they all kind of always work on their mechanics and base anyways.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of just like an evolving kind of thing. But I don't know. It seemed a little elementary to be worried about that as like a 25 or 26-year-old quarterback. But maybe not.
I'm going to say no. You know, I'm going to say no, that obviously it's different with an Anthony Richardson who's 23 as opposed to Levis who's going to be, 26 or whatever. I think there's probably a little bit of a difference, but I'm going to say no. I mean, the truth is Levis and Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson, I think all have to make up for lost time, which was last year. In the case of Levis and Young, it's that they had terrible teams in front of them. And in the case of Richardson, it's that he got hurt right off the bat. Let's get some of your thoughts in on this. Again, we'll use the YouTube chat, I guess. 615-737-1025 is the phones if you want to weigh in that way as well. And then coming up next, Brian Hoyer, recently retired, I guess, getting into the media. Brian Hoyer talks about exactly what he said, these second-year quarterbacks and what he thinks of Will Levis. And I think a lot of Titan fans are going to like this. We'll get to that coming up next here on the program. Let's talk Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. That's right. Hiller is celebrating 34 years of business this month. That's unbelievable. Hiller's as old as me. They're bringing the celebration to you with their birthday bash. So this month until July 31st, enjoy a free smart thermostat with a select HVAC system, free water tests, and free leak detection and shutoff valves with tankless water heaters. And of course, buy 10, get 2 free landscape lights. It's really simple. Celebrate Hiller's birthday bash by visiting happyhiller.com today for details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face truck today.
How difficult is it as we look at second-year quarterbacks? You've got guys like Bryce Young and Will Levis who are both learning new offenses. The coach and the offensive coordinator that was there with them in year one is not there in year two. So how difficult is that for a quarterback to start to, we saw it with Trevor Lawrence, kind of have a tough first year and then gets a new coach, new system, goes into year two. What is that transition like versus somebody like CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson who had consistency in the coaching ranks?
Yeah, that's tough. I think, for me, I remember, after my rookie year, just swimming all year long. And then you come back in OTAs your second year and things just start to click. And so, the guys like CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson who have consistency in what the plays are and the playbook is, that gives them a more advantage over these other guys because, yeah, they played and they were an NFL rookie quarterback last year, but now you have to kind of restart your frame of mind of learning the plays, learning the formations. And so I remember my rookie year, for me, it was such a struggle to learn that I just focus on my job. And there's times I'd break the huddle and Julian Edelman was a rookie with me too. And he'd be like, hey, what do I have on that? And I would kind of look at him and I would just snap the ball because I'm just trying to work on my job. And I would just hope that he remembered what he had. And as the year went on, you get to know a little bit better what you're supposed to do and what the other guys are supposed to do. So now, guys like Will Levis, they have to kind of relearn a new system and not only their own job, but the other 10 guys' job as well.
That was Brian Hoyer on Sirius XM NFL Radio. I think Brian Hoyer's retiring and trying to get into the media game because last week, Brian was doing like one day on NFL Live, one day on NFL Radio, one day on, and I found that to be very insightful. Again, saying that, hey, Levis is going to have to kind of start from scratch here. And it goes back to an issue that I have with the Titans, which is this whole musical chairs of management that they've been playing. The owner values collaboration between the general manager and the coach, but I don't exactly mean when I say collaboration, I don't mean it in the way that they've been using it the last 2 years, but like she put John Robinson and Mike Vrabel on the same timeline with those contract extensions right before she turned around and fired Robinson, because at that point in time, she knew like, hey, I want Mike and I want John to be hand in hand and I want them to go forward. And while I think Vrabel and Robinson both did things that I didn't agree with, at least I understand that philosophy, and I do think that that philosophy is correct. Since then, it's been, that was John Robinson's fault, fire him, but it's none of Vrabel's fault. Then it was bring in a new general manager, tell the general manager and Vrabel to work together. Now it's, well, that's all Vrabel's fault, bring in somebody else new. And so I don't necessarily like that. Because, again, it's like there's all these moving pieces, and it's going to take a long time for the Titans to kind of get everything down pat, squared back to one, and ready to go with a young quarterback. So I guess that's just a philosophy that I don't agree with. And I also think that there's a chance that the owner could go crazy if the team doesn't win this year because, unfortunately, that's what we've seen out of the Titans the last 2 years. Now, Brian Hoyer was asked straight up, this is Amber Theo Harris, who was his co-host on NFL Radio, was asked straight up what he's seen so far out of Will Levis and what he thinks. And here's what Brian Hoyer said.
What's your opinion on Will Levis in general as a quarterback? What do you think the potential is, the ceiling, the floor for Will Levis?
Yeah, I like him a lot. I think, for me, he's kind of in that Josh Allen category where his skill set is. He's an athletic guy. He's got a big arm. He can throw. He can move. He can run. I think he's learning that you can't take hits the same way in the NFL as you did in college. In college, he was probably the same size as some of these linebackers. And in the NFL, it's a little bit different story. Those guys know how to hit. And I think the fact that they're trying to refine his footwork, his mechanics, maybe that keeps him in the pocket a little bit more. You get to your second, third read, take some of those hits off of you. But I think when you look at his raw ability, what he's able to do, and, I got to see a lot of his highlights when he was coming out, he's jumping over guys. So that's where you see the Josh Allen comparison. But I think a big, strong, talented thrower, really has good zip on the ball, especially for being a guy who's, pretty muscular. You don't see too many quarterbacks that have the muscles that Will Levis has. And that's because as a quarterback, you want to be able to move fluidly. And sometimes having those big biceps and big chest muscles kind of restrict you a little bit. But for being a guy who is pretty jacked, I think he throws the ball really well. And to kind of narrow down working on his footwork this offseason will really help him.
Okay. Seemed very positive right there from Brian Hoyer. And also seemed very thorough there from Brian Hoyer. And this is going to sound crazy. This is a little bit of a tangent that doesn't necessarily have to do with Levis. But Ian, did you hear that line where he said he watched a lot of his tape coming out?
Yeah.
Do you know what that makes me think?
What's that?
That Josh McDaniels had Brian Hoyer acting like a coach.
Doing some scouting?
Yeah. Being like, hey, Brian Hoyer, you tell me what you think of this guy.
Would make sense. I mean, he's probably better coach than he is a player at this point.
Well, and it would align with McDaniels, who doesn't trust anybody except for his guys. We talked about my guy syndrome earlier today, which is very prevalent throughout pro sports. But we talked about my guy syndrome. Nobody has my guy syndrome like Josh McDaniels does. Runs off Jay Cutler because he's trying to get Matt Castle and then ends up not getting Matt Castle. But it's my guy. Gets rid of Derrick Carr. Not that I think Derrick Carr is very good, but goes and brings in Jimmy Garoppolo, who I think sucks because that's my guy. Just a little tangent there. But he talked about how, there's some Josh Allen comps. Now, I do agree about the whole muscular thing. I do think that, and I thought I saw, a workout video of Levis that was posted or a workout of the Titans that was posted. And I felt like Levis was getting less yoked. Which I'm not saying don't be in shape. I mean, be in shape. But I think he was getting a little less yoked, which, again, for his position, I think is a good thing. Now, I remember years ago, the Mets had a bunch of really good pitchers, that were young pitchers and threw really hard. And, DeGrom and Syndergaard and Matt Harvey and those guys were all kind of coming of age. And they kept getting hurt. And Tom Glavine was doing a Braves broadcast. And he said, look, back in my day, guys weren't trying to be bodybuilders. And, I think that there's probably something to that. Then I see Ozzie Guillen is doing the White Sox pre and post game shows. And he said, when I played, guys ate 10 hamburgers before the game because you can't pull fat. And it is kind of funny. But when you think of the quarterback and he's talking about, hey, be looser, it's not about, being a world strongman. I think it was Tom Brady that said muscles are for play in the game, not for show. This is a fascinating take there from Brian Hoyer. This one guy, Steve's going crazy on the YouTube chat, Ian. The guy's
I saw that.
I think I have blown his brain up.
It was hard to follow all the stuff he was kind of rambling about. So.
I mean, it's very conspiratorial about me, about again. I mean, I just because of Ian, did I not say to Andrew Burnett the other day when the Predators were wheeling and dealing and making these moves? Did I not say to him, I don't really like congratulating people on moves that they've made because we don't know if they're going to work or not.
Yeah, you did say that.
That's how I feel, period. I'm not sitting here telling you that the Predators are going to win the cup. But again, it turns into you don't love the Predators moves. You don't love the Titans moves. You don't this. And so it's like this whole long thing this guy's going crazy about to the point that it's kind of getting crazy. Somebody says that the same guy, this is the guy we're talking about, because I'm talking about the holes, right? Hole at right tackle, hole at right guard, hole at inside backer, hole at safety, hole at tight end. And I can live with Chig at tight end. As much as I don't want to live with Chig at tight end, I can live with Chig at tight end. But I can't live with what they've got at right tackle. And he says the Preds still have holes too, Jared, especially at goalie, and you're not talking about that. At goalie?
No hole there.
I think that's the one position where they have the least amount of holes of any team in the NHL. They've got a starter. They've got a backup. They've got a long-term top prospect. They've got a goalie signed for the next 9 years, and they've got the top prospect at goal as well. They don't, in fact, the Predators right now don't have any holes. That's the point of free agency, is they went out and they filled their holes. I guess you could argue that second line center, that's kind of a concern. They're going to put Tommy Novak there, but they may move Stamkos over there. You could argue that. And then the same guy says the Preds have done more management and coaching flipping than the Titans. What? The Predators never fire people. They didn't even fire David Poile.
Their GM definitely has not had any turnover. Coaches had a little bit more turnover the last couple of seasons, but I mean, the Titans there for a hot minute were changing GMs and coaches every few years. When you went Fisher and then Munchak and then Wisenhunt and Malarkey, then Vrabel, and that's quite a bit.
Think about this. The Titans fired their coach after making the playoffs for the first time in 10 years and the first time in winning a playoff game in like 13. And they fired the coach after that. The Titans fired their GM after 3 straight playoff appearances, 2 division titles back-to-back, and they had an 88% chance at a 3rd straight division title. I mean, to me, there is no comparison at all. And I don't mean to do this because, look, the NFL is a dog-eat-dog world, and so is the NHL, though the NHL is traditionally more of a fire-the-coach sport than football, if you can believe that. But there is no comparison between the Predators and the Titans when it comes to management stability. The Predators are stable to a fault. The Titans fire somebody every other year. What are we talking about? 615-737-1025. So Marcus Spears has the Titans as his 3rd most improved team. And there was one team in his top 5 that, as much as I like this guy, I'm not sure that he's going to be the saving grace that everybody thinks he'll be. We'll get to that next. Let's talk Window Nation. Did you hear today about how hot the heat index is going to be tomorrow and the rest of the week? It is July. July and August in Nashville are brutal. And if you have bad windows, if you've got inefficient windows, you will have high utility bills all year long, and you don't want that. Window Nation sells some of the most energy efficient windows that you can possibly buy. And Window Nation was recently ranked on the Forbes list of best window installation companies. Again, I've had my experiences with Window Nation. I trust them implicitly. I can't tell you about the other companies. I can tell you about Window Nation. That's right. And right now, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free. Plus, 0 down and no interest or payments for 2 years. Stop paying more than you have to by scheduling an in-home estimate right now. 866-90Nation or windownation.com. Again, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free, 0 down, no interest or payments for 2 years. 866-90Nation, Window Nation, my company, windownation.com.
And last but not least, I'm going Baltimore Ravens. And I know they had some guys leave, but Derrick Henry was enough for me to put them in the top 5. If Todd Monken, as I've said 1,000 times, does what the Ravens do best and are physical at the line of scrimmage when they get in the playoffs, because they are getting in the playoffs, Derrick Henry may end up being the guy that we have conversations about being potentially league MVP, about being in that conversation, and then especially when we get in the playoffs, being able to carry a load for the Baltimore Ravens that could walk them into the Super Bowl.
Whoa now, Marcus Spears. He's saying, hey, we may be talking about Derrick Henry as league MVP. And if you look at the Ravens offseason, they lost their right tackle. They replaced him in the draft. They lost their right guard. They're going to replace him internally. You know, they've lost guys, and they didn't replace all of them, right? They lost the linebacker. He went to Pittsburgh. They didn't really replace him. Now the Ravens are a team that can replace within drafts pretty well, so I understand why they'd feel that way. But they signed Derrick Henry, and TV is saying, oh, my God, I think that this might be, what was it Marcus Spears said? MVP. They always tell you about TV players. You know, if the Dallas Cowboys get their hands on a TV player, even if the guy's not good anymore, I mean, they will talk about it day. If Odell Beckham Jr., who hasn't mattered for 3 years, if Odell were to sign with the Cowboys, it would be wall-to-wall talk because Odell is a TV player. I think Derrick Henry's a great player. I love Derrick Henry. If you've listened to this show, you know that I've even been a supporter of Derrick Henry's before the coach of the Titans supported Derrick Henry. But I'm still not sold that Derrick Henry is really the end-all, be-all for the Baltimore Ravens, the way that everybody like Marcus Spears right there is making him out to be. And I'm going to tell you why. Number one, it is impossible for me to envision Derrick Henry winning league MVP. If Derrick Henry cannot win league MVP in a year in which he runs for 2,000 yards on a team with no defense, then he may just never win league MVP, period. They may never give it to a running back again, which I think is likely. But also, if Derrick Henry is having a great season, the winner of the league MVP award is going to be Lamar because of what that will do for Lamar on faking it to Derrick and running with the ball, or faking it to Derrick and throwing the ball. But I still don't think that Derrick Henry is as big of a deal to the Ravens as Derrick Henry would have been had he gone to the Cowboys. The Ravens last year were close to the Super Bowl, but they didn't make it. And they didn't make it because they can't run the ball. The Ravens have been able to run the ball since Lamar walked into the league. They ran the ball with Mark Ingram. They ran the ball with Gus Edwards. And they're going to run the ball fine with Derrick Henry. They ran it with J.K. Dobbins. They'll be able to run the ball. The problem with the Ravens is that at some point in the AFC playoffs, Lamar is going to have to outshoot one of these quarterbacks, that is Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. At some point, Lamar is going to have to outshoot that guy. And I don't know if Lamar can. Lamar and the Ravens are the best team in the NFL, and they will get better at this with Derrick Henry when they have a lead. You get down 10 points to Lamar, it's over. Because either Lamar will run it and gain 4, or Lamar will hand it off and they'll gain 5, or Lamar will throw it to one of the tight ends and they'll gain 13. And now the clock's running and the chains are moving and the defense can rest up, and Lamar's great at that. What Lamar can't do, or at least hasn't done yet, and we're starting to get to the point to where we have enough data that tells us Lamar can't do this, is he can't outshoot the top passing quarterbacks in the league. Go back to last year's AFC Championship game. Kansas City took the ball to start the game because they wanted to get the lead and make Lamar play from behind. Why did Baltimore lose the game? 2 plays. Zay Flowers trying to reach the ball, which is not Lamar's fault, but Zay Flowers trying to reach the ball into the end zone and L'Jarius Sneed knocking it away. And the interception that Lamar Jackson threw into the end zone down by 2 scores in the fourth quarter because Lamar just said, screw it, got frustrated, and tried to play hero ball down the field. That's not his game. The kind of player Lamar Jackson needs, he needs A.J. Brown. The kind of receiver that is so big and so strong that he can just throw it in A.J.'s vicinity and A.J. can go up and get it, or A.J. can outbox the guy in order to get the ball. That's the player Lamar needs. Derrick Henry will be nice for what they already do well. But when I'm looking to make my club better, I'm looking at where am I deficient? And I'll use the Predators as an example. Why did the Predators lose the series to Vancouver? Because they were awful on the power play. They couldn't score on backup and third string goalies. What did Barry Trotz do? Went out and got a guy that had 19 power play goals last year. That addresses a problem. Derrick, and I love him, doesn't address a problem that the Ravens have. Derrick, I believe, would help the Cowboys more because Derrick does address a problem they have, which is putting the ball in Dak's hands too much. But I know Marcus Spears says, you know what, I think even though the Ravens did almost nothing except for add Derrick Henry, I think they're one of the most improved teams because of Derrick. Are you really improved if all you did was get better at what you already do? Like if the Predators went out into free agency and instead of adding Steven Stamkos, they went out and they added another goalie, wouldn't we be saying, well, wait a minute, you're already good. Why are you doing that? That's what I see Derrick Henry to the Ravens as. And I love Derrick Henry. And I hate the Ravens. But I just don't think it's that much of a needle mover as everybody's making it out to be. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Speaking of the goalie position, Barry Trotz signs UC Saros to an 8-year extension. So it's really a 9-year deal. So we signed Saros for 9 more years. Everybody in the NHL world just assumes that's the end of Yaroslav Askarov. Barry laid it out today on the midday show what they're actually thinking. And I know you're going to think this is crazy, but I don't think enough people are going to hear this. So we'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Let's talk Twice Daily. I love Twice Daily. They are just fabulous when it comes to what they have to offer over at Twice Daily. And again, I have been talking about Twice Daily for forever. And what I love about Twice Daily is I do love the fact that when it comes to Twice Daily, they have all of the best made-to-order stuff right then and there. Have you ever wondered why it is named Twice Daily? It is named Twice Daily because you can go for breakfast in the morning and you can get a bagel. You can get a French toast bagel. You can get a bagel. You can get eggs. You can get meats. You can get cheeses. You can get whatever. You can get a croissant. You can actually get a waffle chicken sandwich. I mean, they got all the breakfast there. And then you can go at night. You can go in the middle of the day. You can get lunch. You can get dinner. You can go there Twice Daily. It's great. I mean, maybe they named it after me because I love going to Twice Daily. And the snacks at Twice Daily are the real deal. They're made to order, and you can get a huge warm pretzel with dip, a 3-piece chicken tender snack, spicy boneless chicken wings, and more. I love doing it. I can order in store right there at the kiosk, or I can go to the made to order app right there with Twice Daily. All fresh and tasty, priced just right for your budget. That's Twice Daily. Twice Daily. What are you craving? Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So Barry Trotz went on the midday show today. Not going to say I'm jealous, but, always like having Barry on our show. But you know what? He's got to go on the other shows too. And I found it fascinating. And I actually found it, interesting that they were the ones that were, asking the Barry questions, and I'm asking Andrew Burnett questions. And talking to Andrew Burnett, which we did earlier this week, very different than talking to Barry. Because the reality about Barry Trotz is he's an open book. Now, he may not exactly answer the question the way you asked it. He may not exactly, but he'll get to the truth some point in like a 3-minute answer, which is, part of the reason why we love him. But Barry Trotz was on the midday show today. And I was listening to it after the fact, because I was tied up when he was on, but I was like, I got to listen to what Barry Trotz had to say. And I was listening to it, and there was one thing where my head popped up. And I was like, okay, I think everybody needs to hear this. So last week, UC Saros signs for 8 years at $774. We knew there was going to be trade protection because we asked Barry on Monday, if there's a deal, are you going to give trade protection? He said yes, but he said it's only going to be some, and there has to be a limit. Robbie asked him about the specific trade protection on whatever day it was. I guess it was Monday of this week. And Barry was not exactly committal as to what it was, what they were actually going to give in terms of trade protection. And so I'm listening to that, and I'm like, But it's my understanding that Saros' trade protection is up front, and the Predators can move Saros if they want to on the back end. And I say that because as soon as they signed Saros, everybody was like, well, what does that mean for Askarov? And not just like the fans here, but people around the league. I'm listening to Boomer Gordon, and he's like, this means that has to be the end for Askarov. There's no way that they can keep Askarov at Milwaukee and transition him over and this and that and what. So here's what Barry said today on the midday show for everybody out there asking after they signed Saros, what does this mean for Yaroslav Askarov, the number one goalie prospect in the NHL? What does it mean? Here's what Barry said today on the midday show, which was embedded in, I don't even remember what the question was, but it was in one of the answers. It was embedded in. He told you exactly what the organization's plan is.
The sky's the limit with this young man. So we want to make sure that when he gets to the NHL, that he is going to be a star goalie. And if he's playing now with UC Saros and he's the backup, slash 1B, then I think that's a great situation. And then at some point, he's going to be, I believe, the star goalie that he can be. So at that point, we'll have to make a decision on what we do there. The other option is that if I get a team call me with a something that makes sense for the long term of the success of the Predators, then I will move that asset to another team and maybe reposition it maybe at forward or defense. I got to protect the organization, and there's not one player that's bigger than the organization.
Okay, he just told you. Right now, UC Saros is a starting goalie. They think Yaroslav Askarov has all the talent in the world. They think that he's going to be a star. Not what I think. That's what they think because he just said it. I think this young man has a potential to be the star. He talked in the same interview about how there are some technical aspects of his game that need to get better, and they brought in Mitch Korn, who is the goalie coach guru. He's kind of the Bill Callahan of the goalie position. They brought him in here to work with Askarov on that, but they think that he can be a star. The guy that Barry Trotz was comparing Yaroslav Askarov to this week was Pekka Rinne. And we know what he thinks of Pekka Rinne, and we know how good Pekka Rinne was. So Barry told you right then and there, we think this young man can be a star. We're going to get it to a point, hopefully, where it can be, Saros is 1A, and he's 1B. And then at some point, this is what Barry said, quote, at some point we'll have to make a decision. Today, last Friday when they signed the deal, that's not the point where they've made the decision. If they gave UC Saros a full no move throughout the duration of this new contract, then they would have made their decision. I am fascinated to see what the exact terms of the no move for Saros end up being, but it is my understanding that it is very tight early and it is more liberal late. The Predators can get out of the deal. And so when it comes to Askarov, Barry is telling you exactly what they're doing. Instead of trying to come up in your head with some idea of like, I mean, what does this mean for Askarov? Does this mean that he told you? He told you right there exactly what it meant. He says, at some point, we'll have to make a decision. Then if somebody calls me and they want to give me something for this asset, maybe I do make a move for a forward or a defenseman and I trade the goalie because I'll do whatever is in the best interest of the Predators. But he's not giving Askarov away. He's not giving up on Askarov. He's not dictating today that UC Saros will be the Predators goalie for the next 9 years. It's simple. If he doesn't develop and he doesn't become the guy, then they're protected with Saros in net. If he ends up becoming the guy and becomes Pecorine and becomes better than Saros, then they'll move Saros. It's not complicated. He's made it abundantly clear. And yet, I guarantee you, even after he said that, and again, this is Barry Trotz, who pretty much tells the truth 100% of the time. Even after that, people will still say, well, there's no way that they can actually really care about Askarov. Really? Because he just said that he thinks he might be as good as Pecorine. He thinks he might become a huge star. Like, imagine if there was a minor league for the NFL, AAA. Where would you have rather had Will Levis playing quarterback last year? The majors? Behind that horrible offensive line? Or would you have liked him to get reps running the system at AAA? That's what the Packers did with Jordan Love. I don't think the Packers looked at themselves and said, you know, in 3 years we'll be ready to move off Aaron and move to Jordan. I think it was let's see. Let's see if Jordan develops, and if Jordan develops and then Aaron wants to be a diva, we'll move off of Aaron and we'll move to Jordan. That's where the Predators are with the goalies. I think the moral of the story here, even though, you know, it's a big contract, 8-year contract. Well, Shea Weber signed a 15-year contract. They still moved him. The moral of the story is that the Saros contract signed last Friday, technically signed on Monday, the Saros contract is not the end of the road for Yaroslav Askarov with the Predators. And I believe them when they say that because they have not deviated from that message and they have not lied to us about any of this previously. They told us they were going to sign Saros to a deal. They told us they were going to give Saros some trade protection. They told us there was going to be a limit on the trade protection with Saros. Barry said about a month ago, after they traded Ryan McDonough back to Tampa Bay, Barry came on this show and he said, at some point 4 years from now, they'll probably have to make a decision, one guy or the other. But we're not there today. So if anybody ever asks you, or if you ever think in your head, what are they going to do with Yaroslav Askarov? You have your answer. He told you. They're going to develop him. They're eventually going to bring him up. He's going to back up Saros. They might transition it more to a 1A, 1B, and then they're going to pick a guy. And as we've learned with sports, 9 times out of 10, Ian, who does the tie go to?
What do you mean?
Between two guys, one older, one younger, Steve Young, Joe Montana,
always the younger
Brett
guy.
Favre, Aaron Rodgers. It's always the younger guy.
Yeah.
Tie always goes to the younger guy. Remember that. So that's, you know, Barry's told you what they're doing. So don't ask anymore because that's the answer. Now, there is something that they did as far as all this goalie maneuvering is concerned that I do not understand at all. I still don't understand it. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
The development is everything, and sometimes not only the player thinks he should be playing in the NHL now. Of course they do. I can ask any 19 or 20-year-old, and I said, they all think they should play in the NHL now. But to be productive and have a long career, you sometimes have to go through that. So if Askarov comes in and he is the second best goalie, then we'll figure it out after that. If he's the third best goalie, then he may have to start in Milwaukee, and that will not hurt him.
That was Barry Trotz again on the midday show today saying, hey, whatever happens with Askarov will be in the best interest of Askarov. The development is the most important thing. He talked about Pekka. Now, Pekka came on the show about a month ago, and Pekka said that, hey, going down to Milwaukee for the third year was the worst thing in the world. It was the worst feeling. But in hindsight, I wish I had a crystal ball so I could see how important that third year was. And I think that it's very easy, especially having Pekka on the coaching staff, I think it is very easy to go to Askarov and point to Pekka and say, hey, it's okay to play the third year in the AHL, and it doesn't mean that we don't believe in you. It doesn't mean that you can't be a superstar goalie in this league. Pekka, how much money have you made over the years? $70 million. Probably made somewhere around there. $70 million. He played 3 years in Milwaukee. It'll be okay. So that I understand. And I understand the idea of wanting to send him to Milwaukee where he'll play almost every night, putting him with Mitch Korn, who is the goalie coach guru, and letting him work through his mistakes on a team that most of us, not all of us, because some of us do, but most of us don't give a rat's ass about. That's the Milwaukee Admirals. You start doing things up here, we care. Do them down there, again, there's some people out there that care, but most of us don't. What I don't understand is why did they give Scott Wedgwood a 2-year contract? Like, they brought Scott Wedgwood in to be the backup. Kevin Lankinen left. Do we even know, Ian, where Kevin Lankinen went? I don't think I saw where he signed. I'm sure he signed, but do we
I
know
don't
where?
think he has signed. I'm sure we would have seen that by now.
Kevin Lankinen has not signed a contract yet?
I'll double check, but I haven't seen anything about that. Surely we would have seen or heard by now.
Isn't the money all gone now? Isn't this like the NFL? Like, once you
I
get
don't know.
past the first couple
Tarasenko
days-
just signed for 2 years for 9.5 or something like that. Which
9.5 for Tarasenko?
not per year.
Oh,
Total. Sorry.
I was like, whoa.
4, whatever that is, 4.25 with Detroit.
Not a Tarasenko guy anymore. I think he and Kane, I think, have kind of gone from superstar to role player, which I'm afraid may happen with some of the guys here, but right now they're still 40-goal scorers. But again, a 2-year deal for Wedgwood. I understand the idea that Lankinen wants to go somewhere maybe where he can start, although I don't know where that's going to be, since, again, a lot of the media, a lot of the media hasn't talked about any of these goalie situations and brought Lankinen into it, which makes me think the teams aren't talking to the media saying Lankinen, would be an option. But I think the Predators assumed Lankinen was going to go try to get some more playing time, and that makes sense, or get a better contract, so that makes sense. So they let him go. That's fine. They went and signed Wedgwood. Wedgwood was on my board last Friday when I looked and I said, okay, who, do the Predators need to target in free agency? Because Wedgwood was a true backup free agent. Totally fine with them signing him. But I don't understand why they signed him to a 2-year contract. And then it's like, well, maybe that's what it would take. Maybe in order to get Wedgwood, if you wanted him to be the backup goaltender, maybe you had to give him the 2-year deal. And that's fine, but why would I bend what I really need, which is a goalie for 1 year, a backup goalie for 1 year? Why would I do that when all these other goalies are taking 1-year deals? Ilya Samsonov, a 1-year deal in Vegas. Yeah, he sucks, but it's the backup goalie. I'm sure Wedgwood sucks too. James Reimer, 1-year deal. He's been around for forever, but it is what it is. Matt Murray, 1-year deal. You know what's crazy about Matt Murray? What's crazy to me about Matt Murray is that Matt Murray was supposed to be like the future in net and won those 2 cups with the Penguins, and since then has not been heard from. And he's played on like 6 different teams, but he signed a 1-year deal. The guy who was supposed to be the savior in Edmonton, Jack Campbell, he signed a 1-year deal. My thing is I understand, hey, you want to be able to have a respectable backup goalie, fine, whatever, that's your business. But if my plan is to eventually have Askarov back up Saros, and then one day it be a 1A, 1B, and then maybe if Askarov becomes a superstar, transitioning to Askarov and then trading Saros, why would I sign the backup goalie whose really only job is to be there in case something happens to Saros? Why would I sign him to a 2-year deal? I mean, I understand the idea of sitting down with Yaroslav Askarov, who thinks he's ready for the NHL and has played in the NHL, I believe, each of the last 2 years. I think he got 1 game, Ian, if I'm not mistaken, under John Hines.
Who? I'm sorry?
Askarov got 1 year under, got one game under Hines.
I think so, yep.
Yeah. So 1 game under Hines, and then got a couple of games last year. And he wants to play in the NHL right now. As Barry has said, everybody wants to play in the NHL. So he's no different than everybody else, but it's obvious he wants to play in the NHL. You can sit down with him and you can say, hey, you can do a 3rd year in Milwaukee. Pekka did a 3rd year in Milwaukee, and look what it did for him. You're only 22 years old. Goalies take a little bit longer. It's fine. It's okay. Don't worry about it. You can't sit down with him and say, we want you to go back for a 3rd and a 4th year. This is not college. You cannot convince him. Like, if you were to sit down with him today and you're trying to get him into the right mood and the right attitude. You know, we had Andrew Burnett on the other day, and Andrew Burnett, I said, what do you say to him? And he said, you know, I tell him, hey, take it one day at a time. You know, it's easy to get discouraged, but don't. Just take it one practice at a time. Take it one game at a time. Take it one day at a time. Hard to do that if the other goalie's in front of you. It's one thing to have Saros in front of you. It's another thing of, hey, you might not even be the backup because they signed a backup for 2 years. So I don't understand that. I mean, if Ilya Samsonov's taking a 1-year deal, I don't know why you had to give Wedgwood a 2-year deal. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Bruce is up next on Scott Wedgwood. Thank you for calling and thank you for waiting. What's up, Bruce?
I have a theory on why they signed Wedgwood to 2 years.
Okay.
If Askarov wins the backup job at camp or sometime during the season, the plan is going to be to send Wedgwood down to Milwaukee. It makes it more difficult for another team to claim him if they have to hold on to him and pay him for 2 years. So I think the signing of the 2 years was to make it harder for another team to snag him if we decide to send him to Milwaukee.
Can he be sent to Milwaukee?
Yes, he can absolutely be sent, but he'd have to clear waivers. So again, since he's got enough games, he would have to clear waivers. He's on a 2-way contract, so he's got to make the same money either way. But if we send him to Milwaukee, he would have to clear waivers. It's more difficult for a team to make the decision to claim him if they've got to pay him for 2 years compared to 1.
Interesting thought, Bruce. Thank you for the call. Ian, does that theory check out for you?
I don't know. I'd have to think about that a little bit more for a second. I guess the waivers thing makes sense. He would have to go through waivers.
I don't totally understand how the whole waivers and cap process works in hockey.
Yeah.
Because it gets complicated.
Mhm.
Like I remember when the Predators, basically essentially fired Mike Ribeiro. I don't know if you remember that, but it was like all complicated of how they pushed him through waivers and sent him down, but then he didn't go, but then I don't even totally remember it. I mean, the NHL's weird in that way. It could make sense that.
I mean, yeah, that means his contract and rights would pretty much be available to all NHL teams. And so if you were to claim him, you would also claim his contract.
Here's the thing, though. They're not going to waive him this year. Like, they're not going to waive him this year. They would waive him next year when he'd have 1 year left on the deal. And even then, what they're going to do this year is, and Barry even alluded to this on his midday show interview, they are going to spot start Askarov this year. So, again, if Saros is going 60 games, which is 2/3, I believe my math is right. If Saros is going 60 games, I think 60 games would be 3/4. So if he's going, I think he'll probably go 60 games. Then what that means is, for every 4 games they play, obviously one of them Saros isn't going to play. So think of it like a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Tuesday. Well, what they'll do is they'll have Saros sit that out on an emergency basis. They'll call up Askarov for 1 game. Askarov will play and he'll go back down. And then the next time that comes up, Wedgwood will start. And it would not surprise me if Saros plays 60 games, Wedgwood plays 14, and Askarov plays 8. He's going to get more spot starts this year. So then if your theory is, well, then waive him after that, and people want, well, they'll only have 1 year left on the deal anyways. So I'm not sure that totally sniffs out, though at least I do appreciate the creativity and the thinking. Because I don't understand why they would give him 2 years. Joshua says 2 years less in the cap hit. If you offered a 1 year deal, he would want more money. So they're lowering the AAV by giving him 2 years. Then go sign Samsonov or go sign some other Scarbini. The backup goalie position, I don't get too worked up in. And I know Willie will tell you, if you look at the numbers, the Predators wouldn't have made the playoffs without Kevin Lankinen. But could they have put in, Connor Ingram, for instance, who was here once upon a time? Could he have played those games and you have won enough to get into playoffs? I think yes. So make that of what you will. All right, a lot of you want to weigh in on the YouTube chat, so we will. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Plus, coming up next on the program, Barry keeps talking about these young guys. I'm not sure I'm as sold on all these young guys as Barry Trotz seems to be, the way he keeps talking about these young guys. We'll get to that coming up next here on the program. Stillman and Company. Let's talk Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Hiller, they are proud supporters. That's right, proud supporters of the Nashville Predators, and they are celebrating their 34th birthday this year. They're bringing the celebration to you with the birthday bash this month. From now until July 31st, enjoy a free smart thermostat with select new HVAC systems, a free water test, and free leak detection and shut-off valves with tankless water heaters. And by 10, you'll get 2 free landscape lights. It's pretty good. Celebrate Hiller's birthday bash all month long. Visit happyhiller.com today for details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.
Players take different paths to the NHL. I mean, you know, you look at young players that we have. I mean, Tomasino's path is way different than Evangelista's. You know, you could say that from an outside, let's just talk about 2 of our young guys. You take different paths to the NHL. Like we got a coach that took a very long path. I mean, he started in the Coast League. I sent him down 11 times one year when he was playing in the American Hockey League. And then, you know, he played in the American Hockey League, played in the NHL, and then, you know, 1,100 games later, it's a pretty impressive career. You look at Pekka Rinne, who was a 6th round draft choice, and he played 3 years in Milwaukee. We actually had him as our backup goalie, I think, after 2 years. If you remember, we signed Dan Ellis to be the Milwaukee goalie, and he ended up being our number 1 goalie. Pekka had to go down for his 3rd year in Milwaukee. And then now he's probably going to go to the Hall of Fame, and there's a big statue in front of Bridgestone for him. So everybody takes a different path.
That was Barry Trotz on the Midday Show. And if you listen to that whole interview of Barry on the Midday Show today, man, he is high on the prospects. And I'm not talking about the goalie. I'm talking about the skaters. You know, they got the development camp going on. That's kind of the second wave of prospects. But they've got a almost ready-to-go wave. And then the development camp guys, the Mullendykes and the Matthew Woods and the Russian kid they took last week, those guys are all in development camp. That's kind of the future wave. You know, that's on a couple years down the road. But they got a lot of guys lined up. And Barry was, you know, singing their praises on the Midday Show. And even in the interview he did with the Athletics, Pierre LeBrun, He talked about, hey, these are real prospects that we've got on their way that we expect to play a huge role on this team. And so let me say this about prospects, because we had a long-standing rule on this program that for about 6 years really held true. Ian, do you remember the rule on this program?
About talking about prospects on your own time?
Yes. Do Preds prospects on your own time. I'd have people tell me, oh, Jared, look at Milwaukee. Look at what they are. I don't care. Do the prospects on your own time. Because we got caught up in the Ellie Tolvanen watch of 2018 when David Poyle told us, once he's done with the KHL, we're going to sign him and we're going to stick him right in the lineup for our Stanley Cup run. And they signed him, and Laviolette played him in a couple of games, and it was like, no. And Ellie Tolvanen is a third liner, and he's a power play specialist, and that's just what he is. So I've always said, do the prospects on your own time, because I don't have time to sit here. You tell me about some 19-year-old from Nova Scotia, and I'm sorry. Now, we did kind of walk that back for about the last year. Once the team decided they were going to tear it down, or at least reset, or whatever you want to call it, and they started acquiring prospects and picks in return, and the draft was in Nashville, it was kind of like, okay, now we can kind of get into this some, and we can talk about Mullendijk, or we can talk about Askarov, or we can talk about Wood or Kemmel or those guys, but they're still years away. But Barry is keen on these prospects. Now, Philip Tomasino was drafted 5 years ago. It's time now for him to be good in the NHL. And they'll tell you, like Barry did, hey, his path might be a little different. So here's what I'll say about the young guys and the prospects, because if you're going to sign a bunch of 30-year-olds, what you need to have is you need to have young guys developing behind them that can start off as contributors and then can become stars. Now, they don't all have to be stars. I've always said, for every 5 prospects you have, 1 is likely to pop. So far, Evangelista is the one. Now, there is hope for Spencer Stastny, but we'll see. But there's really no telling. You got a handful of 5 prospects, and one guy could be taken 4th overall, and the other guy could be taken in the 5th round, and the 5th round guy is almost as likely as the 1st round guy to be good. I can't explain it to you other than to say that over the last 5 years of defense prospects that the Predators have had, who would have thought that Alexander Carrier was going to be the best of the group? I mean, Carrier was an afterthought. So here's what they have. They have 2 waves. They have the first wave. They have the second wave. The first wave, by my count, is Parsonen, Tomasino, Stastny, Delgazzo, Willsby, LaRue, Svechkov, and Schaefer. So Evangelista's the first guy. He's already in. He's in the club. Don't worry about him. But 1 or 2 of those guys, and it's only going to be 1 or 2, 1 or 2 of those guys has to make it. Then there's the second wave of Mullendijk, Wood, Kemble, that Russian kid that they drafted last
Igor
week.
Surin,
Teddy Stiga, who they took in the 2nd round. Those guys, one of those guys is going to pop. But they better be good. Because this team right now is ready to win. And other than Stastny, they don't really need any of those guys yet. They might need a LaRue or somebody like that to fill out the lineup or something. But they really only need one guy right now. But down the road, as these guys get older, as O'Reilly gets older, as some of these guys start to age out of their deals, whether it's Lazan, Shin, Fabro, Nyquist, who's got 1 year left, Novak, who might stink, then you need somebody else. And if Barry's going to bank on the prospects and he's going to spend up to the cap and use all the cap space on Stamkos and Shea and Marchessault, and if he's going to do that, then you better be right that these guys are actually good. Some of these guys actually have to end up being good. They're not all going to be good, but some of them have to. Because over the previous waves, when the Predators have gotten really excited about a prospect lately, for the most part, They have not come to fruition. Fiala did, but he didn't do that here. Jimmy Vesey did not come to fruition. And I know Vesey is a legitimate NHLer. Vesey's not that good. Tolvanen did not come to fruition. Fabro has been a disappointment. And I know Fabro is a bottom pair defenseman, but he was a first-round pick, and they signed him right out of Boston University and stuck him on the big club. And it was like, he's the next guy. He's the next guy. Weber, Suter, Yossi, Ellis, Ekholm, Fabro. And they were banking on those guys. Now, some of those drafts were depleted because they traded first-round picks for Cody Franzen and Ryan Hartman and Santorelli and things like that, so you don't have the same ammo that you had before. But it is something that if you're going to bank on these prospects, and it sounds the way Barry talks, it sounds like he is banking on these prospects, they better be good.
I wonder who could make on offense, really specifically, which forward might make the biggest impact this year.
Well, I mean, we're taking Evangelista out of this, right?
Correct.
He's graduated. He's in the club.
Yeah. Just out of this group, like Parsonen, he showed flashes, played pretty well in Milwaukee towards the second half.
It's Parsonen or LaRue, right?
I'm wondering about Svechkov and if he actually has a chance to make an impact offensively, but I worry that he's not a bottom six guy. And if they would put him on, the third line.
So Barry was talking about this today on the midday show about wanting to have 2 old guys and 1 young guy per line.
Okay.
And so if he ends up having Tommy Novak center that second line with Stamkos and Marchessault, I guess you would count Novak as a young guy.
Sure.
So that's fine.
In that scenario, I would agree with that.
So then you would almost have to put Evangelista on the first line with Forsberg and O'Reilly, which I would not want to do. But I'm also not convinced that Luke Evangelista is a bottom 6 forward in the NHL. So that does concern me a little bit. Here's the problem I have with that. They tried that last year, and they put Parsonen on that first line with Forsberg and O'Reilly.
Didn't last long.
And it was a massive disappointment. And I wonder if, Parsonen got put on that line as like hey, we're going to try to alleviate some of the pressure off of you by sticking you with Forsberg and O'Reilly. But in reality, it upped the pressure on him because it's like, wow, I'm on the first line with Forsberg and O'Reilly, and I got to get to their level. And if I don't get to their level, I might stink. And the next thing you know, he's in Milwaukee. I wonder if that's really a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they have been speaking a different tune about Tomasino now that the dust has settled. After the end of the season, Andrew Burnett had some very harsh words for Philip Tomasino. It made me think that they had given up on him. And then Barry today kept bringing up Tomasino over and over and over again with the midday show. And Andrew brought him up on the show on Monday when we talked about kind of that next wave of guys that are banging at the door. I also, when I left out that second wave, this Gibson that they acquired last week, they traded a second-round pick to Detroit and some guy I've never heard of. They traded him to Detroit in order to get this Andrew Gibson. Alex Daugherty says that the Predators liked Andrew Gibson last year in the second round, traded up to 43 with Detroit, who also picked at 42, and Detroit took the Gibson kid at 42, and then got a second rounder in order to part with Gibson this year or whatever. And I said, that's bad business on Detroit's part. Because then when Barry gets the opportunity to screw you, I would say, go do it. Go take advantage of it if they're going to try to screw you. But they seem to love this Gibson kid. And I was reading Scott Wheeler in The Athletic, and he was writing, he had Gibson ranked as the 12th best prospect in the Detroit system, but the Detroit system was the number 2 system in the NHL. And he said that he really likes Gibson and thinks he can be a third pair defenseman in the NHL. Well, I don't think Barry Trotz, who's talking about taking big swings with the scouts, I don't think he's trading a second-round pick to try to get back a prospect that he thinks can be a third-pair defenseman. So he's probably also on that second wave of prospects. As a fan and as a kid, I used to do this with my baseball team. I was a Braves fan. I used to get really into this. And I would just think that all the things that they say these prospects are going to be, I just believed they would be. Like I just got excited and I was like, yeah, they say this guy, he's a top prospect. He's got a good fastball. He's going to be pitching in the big leagues. And it was about 1 out of every 5. So when it comes to the first wave of these guys we're talking about, Parsonen, Tomasino, LaRue, Svechkov, that group, Schaefer, probably one guy's going to make it out of that group.
And I do wonder if this would help Brunette talk about wanting to roll those top 9, those three offensive lines, and how that could adjust things.
So, maybe. See, to your point, that's where I think LaRue actually has the best shot because I think he might be a bottom 6 forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so he could fit in there.
But, Kiefer Sherwood probably not going to come back, so you'll have a spot in the 4th line.
Well, he's on Vancouver.
So
he's definitely not coming back.
Yeah.
But I was surprised to see he was in Vancouver. Vancouver they might actually have a pretty decent team. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your thoughts. 615-737-1025. Plus, coming up next, everybody is going to crap on this. Everybody is going to crap on it. But I actually think it's a fascinating thing to think about because ESPN's 2025 mock draft is out. And they don't think very highly of what the Titans are going to do this upcoming season. We'll get to that next. Let's talk about Twice Daily first. I love Twice Daily. You can go twice a day. Go get a coffee in the morning. Go get one of the breakfast sandwiches in the morning. Come back at night, grab some drinks, grab whatever it may be. Stop by the beer cave. Or you can order up a pizza there. You can order up a sandwich, a sub, a wrap. It's wonderful. I love Twice Daily. And Twice Daily snacks are the real deal. Made to order. You can get a huge warm pretzel and dip, a 3-piece chicken tender snack, or spicy boneless chicken wings. You can order in-store or, like I do, via the Twice Daily app. All fresh and tasty, priced just right for your budget. I mean, I really do love using the Twice Daily app. No, there's no smoke there. I love it. That's Twice Daily. Twice Daily. What are you craving?
Teams are not going to move off of a first-round pick as easily as they would a second-round pick because of organizational pride. That's just the way it works. I mean, just look around the NFL. Like, it's the scholarship is that much bigger if you're the 7th pick in the first round versus the 7th pick in the second. I know he was like the 2nd pick in the third and the second. If this year is a total miss, and I don't think it will be for real, but if it is, moving off of a second-round pick a year from now is just a different calculus than having to admit error on a first-round pick.
That was Field Yates on our show at the Super Bowl saying, hey, I don't think it's going to be a disastrous year for Will Levis, but if it is a disastrous year for Will Levis, it is easier for the Titans to want to move on than if he's a first-round pick. And some of that's the money. Will Levis's total contract is just over $9 million for the 4 years that he signed to be the Titans quarterback. Anthony Richardson's with the Colts is $34 million. So sometimes it's easier to swallow the money when you just say, all right, let's just move on when we realize that somebody's not the guy. So ESPN.com, Matt Miller put out a new mock draft today. Don't know exactly why they decided to put out a mock draft.
July 4th reading, you know.
You know what? More credit to them. I'm here for that. Takes. And what they had was Carson Beck going number 1 overall. New England apparently has the worst record, but they have a trade. The Giants trade up to number 1. Carson Beck goes number 1. Shedeur Sanders, the Raiders trade up to number 2. I think they trade with Carolina. I can't remember exactly, but Shedeur Sanders goes number 2. I've already told you I'm out on Shedeur Sanders. I don't want him. But the Raiders, that sounds like the perfect place for Shedeur Sanders and Dion and all of his bullcrap. And they have the Titans picking 4th. Now, the way that he decided who was picking where was based on ESPN's FPI. Now, Matt Miller does not have the Titans taking a quarterback with the 4th pick. Instead, he has the Titans taking James Pierce Jr., a pass rusher out of Tennessee. By the way, for all the UT fans out there that think that the Titans are slapping them in the face by drafting a Kentucky quarterback, how would you love that, wouldn't you? Couldn't bitch about that one. Matt Miller writes, quote, "This is a prove-it season for quarterback Will Levis as a second-year starter, but the early returns were good enough that we can forget about quarterback at the top of the draft for now." Okay. Instead, the Titans could land my preseason number 1 overall player and an in-state prospect. At 6'5", 244, Pierce has special quickness around the edge, picking up 9.5 sacks last season. He also flashed his all-around game with a 52-yard pick 6 last year. Pierce would be an instant boost opposite Harold Landry III. By the way, I don't know if Harold Landry is going to be on this team after this year, but that's a different discussion for, 9 months, 10 months down the road. Here's the thing, though. Matt Miller says this is a prove-it year for Will Levis, but for right now, let's say Levis is good enough. Don't worry about it. It's if the Titans pick 4th in the draft, which is what the ESPN FPI is predicting they will be doing, Will Levis will not be the quarterback of this team in 2025. You think the owner, who, even though last year, the Titans could not decide if they wanted to be a rebuilding team or not a rebuilding team. I think I've decided if you can't pick for yourself, if you're rebuilding or you're not rebuilding, you're rebuilding. Because with that offensive line, Joe Montana and Jerry Rice could not have done better. So they were rebuilding last year, and the owner still fired the coach and the coaching staff. So if you think the owner is going to accept a year in which they're picking 4th, I looked it up this morning. Arizona picked 4th last year. They won 4 games. If you win 4 games this year with Will Levis at quarterback, he will not be the quarterback next year. So I understand, reading this and saying, hey, the first 2 quarterbacks are off the board in Carson Beck and Shedeur Sanders. Tennessee's sitting there at 4. There's a pass rusher. You know what? Levis looked good enough last year. Maybe they don't need a quarterback. That's fine. If Tennessee's picking 4, they're going to need a quarterback because Levis is not the guy if you win 4 games this year. Now, maybe they're not picking a quarterback because the Titans decide with a new stadium on the horizon that they're going to go pay Dak Prescott $60 million a year, but they are not picking a quarterback at 4. They are not rolling it back with Levis if they're picking at 4. With Amy as the owner? No. If they end up picking 4th this year, somebody's getting fired, and it might be the quarterback. So, again, July 4th reading, taking a look at the draft prospects, everything else. And don't get mad at Matt Miller when he puts out a mock draft and has the Titans picking 4, because, again, he did not determine the draft order. It was ESPN's FPI, which has New England as the worst team in the league. And I hate to say this, but don't you think New England probably is the worst team in the league? So they've got you as the 4th worst team in the league. And again, while, who knows if James Pierce Jr. is going to be a good pro or not. We've seen guys that are supposed to be the number 1 pick and they end up not being the number 1 pick. Remember Matt Barkley? But if the Titans are sitting there at 4 because they won 4 games, they're not going to do what Arizona did. Arizona totally tore it down. Kyler played the last half of the year coming back off the ACL. And Arizona, in spite of the fact that there is zero evidence that says Kyler Murray is a franchise quarterback, Arizona's decided, no, we're good with Kyler, because that way they could take Marvin Harrison Jr. The Titans will not do that. The Titans will either sign a Dak Prescott or a Kirk Cousins, or they will draft a quarterback. Quinn Ewers, I think, is probably the 3rd best quarterback after those 2 guys. But they are not going to roll it back with Levis if they're not very good next year. And I hope Levis understands that. This year, everybody's on their knees talking about how great Levis is. And I'm talking about inside that building. We talk about the sunshine pumping and how great everything is. It will not be that way if they win 4 games. And I hope he knows that. I hope he knows that, they looked at Vrabel the same way they looked at him. Oh, he's the best. Just saying. 615-737-1025. Speaking of Vegas odds, the FPI is somewhat formed off the Vegas odds. Speaking of the Vegas odds, the Predators have skyrocketed up the Las Vegas odds. Where do they sit? Not just with Vegas, but in Jared Stillman's rankings. Where do they sit in the Western Conference? And I was surprised when I did this exercise. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. It's 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday on a Wednesday as we celebrate the 4th of July, Independence Day tomorrow. We're off Friday. And I'm not one to sit here and tell you, about vacation or anything like that because we got tons of great programming, but I'll be off until basically the start training game. So, we got 1 hour down to go. Now, I want to start with this, which is apparently the money in Vegas, not the money that they were supposed to pay Jonathan Marchessault, but the money in Las Vegas for betting on the Predators has absolutely skyrocketed this week. This is according to ESPN.com. Quote, the Preds saw the most line movement of any team in the league at ESPN Bet, moving from 35-1 to 18-1 to win the Stanley Cup. DraftKings reports identical movement, while FanDuel moved from 31-1 to 20-1. DraftKings also took the Predators from 17-1 to plus 900 to win the Western Conference. The thrilling additions of Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, and Brady Shea, among others, has the Predators as one of the most popular teams with the betting public. DraftKings says that since June 30th, Nashville has taken 35% of the bets and 76% of the handle to win the conference. However, ESPN writes, there was one team that took more bets, 42% to win the West over the same time period, and that is the reigning Western Conference champion Edmonton Oilers, who solidified what is likely to be the best offense in the NHL by re-signing Adam Henrique, Matthias Janmark, and Corey Perry. Then bolstered it by adding Jeff Skinner and Victor Arvidsson. Did Corey Perry, Ian, even play for them down the stretch?
Yeah, he made a couple of. I think he was in and out of the lineup during the final stretch, and in the Cup final, I think he was in and out a few times.
Didn't notice him. Those transactions, ESPN writes, moved them from 10-1 at their opening odds to plus 900 on Tuesday morning on ESPN Bet, tying them with Florida to win it all. Edmonton became the outright favorites at plus 800 a short time later. The sportsbook also notes that their odds of winning the Pacific Division have shortened as well. But for the big winners in the betting odds after the first day of NHL free agency, there were also a few losers. The 2023 Cup champion Vegas Golden Knights went from 11-1 to 18-1. I think that's really all around one move, right, Marchessault? That the betting market was anticipating Marchessault would be in Vegas, and he's not, and it goes from 11-1 to 18-1 to the Carolina Hurricanes, who were favored to win it all at the start of the playoffs. Really? Were favored to win it all at the start of the playoffs, moved up to plus 950, or moved from plus 950 to 14-1 to hoist the cup in 2025, according to FanDuel. So that's what they're saying is happening as far as the odds are concerned. So I saw Edmonton as the team to win it all. And I really thought, really? Edmonton to win it all? And then I thought, well, where do the Predators sit in all of this? Well, let's take the Eastern Conference out of this. Because again, Edmonton just barely passed Florida as far as the betting market is concerned. Let's take the Eastern Conference out of this. Let's just focus on the West. And this morning I sat down and I looked at all the rosters of all the moves that have been made. And I said to myself, where do the Nashville Predators sit? And then I thought I'd make a top 5 list of the Western Conference, which ended up being a top 6 list because these are the teams that I think are legitimate contenders in the Western Conference. So, Ian, if you would, let's start at the very, very top. This is Jared's Western Conference rankings after free agency.
Number 1.
Dallas. A lot of people are going to have Edmonton number 1. Not me. I'm going with the Dallas Stars. They have so many good players. I mean, they traded Radek Faksa the other day, and I was like, God, I wish he was on the Predators. So many good players. Jason Robertson, Rope Hintz, Miro Heiskanen, all good players in their prime. Good, young, in their prime players. That's the driving force behind Dallas. But then they've got some good old pawpaws too. Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, even Duchesne with what they ask him to do. They ask him to bat 7th in the lineup, not 3rd or 4th. Duchesne actually is a good fit for what they're looking to do. Then they got young players too. Wyatt Johnston, Logan Stankoven, Those guys kind of made their additions this year to the lineup. And then at the very end, I believe it was game 7 of the Western Conference Final, they stuck Maverick Bork in there, who was their first round pick in 2020. He was the leading scorer and MVP of the AHL. And I said to myself, imagine if the Predators had the MVP of the AHL. They'd never shut up about it. And so they got good young players. They've got good old players. They've got good players in their prime. And they've got a good goaltender in Jake Ottinger. Peter DeBoer's a good coach. Dallas, quite frankly, I think Dallas would be my favorite to win it all right now. I think they're the top team in the NHL. I think they are solid top to bottom. Dallas is number 1 in the West.
Number 2.
Nashville. I'm putting the Predators number 2. The Predators lack a true number 1 center. Ryan O'Reilly at this point in his career is not a true number 1 center. That's it. They have a core of 6 really, really good skaters. 340 goal scorers. Brady Shea can either anchor the second pair or team up with Roman Josi, as Andrew Burnett alluded to on the show on Monday, to combine, to put together this just absolute shutdown pair. They should have an excellent power play with the top power play coach in the NHL coaching it. They have high-end goaltending with UC Saros, who finished 5th in the Vezina finalist voting, Vezina voting, finished 5th, and he didn't even have a good season this year. And they've got a bunch of young players knocking on the door, 1 or 2 of whom they need to break through. LaRue, Schaefer, Svechkov, you name it, Stasny, Evangelista's already graduated. He's in the group. I think, again, outside of the number 1 center position, the Predators are, without a doubt, loaded everywhere, and I've got them as the number 2 team in the Western Conference.
Number 3.
Edmonton. And I know you're going to say, wait a minute, Jared, you talk about Edmonton all the time. You said going into the playoffs, this is the one team you did not want to play. You say every time you watch them against the Predators, they win 8-0, and that is true. But Edmonton's starting to get a little top heavy. Now, Jeff Skinner is going to help, because outside of McDavid and Draisaitl and Ekholm and Bouchard and Hyman, although, Hyman, I think he's a real estate player, they're not that good. And Jeff Skinner will get a second wind. Now that he's gotten bought out of crap-ass Buffalo, he'll get a second wind being on a team, worth of crap. And Hyman will have at least 40 next year, because that's where, he is. But they added Victor Arvidsson. And I'm just not an Arvidsson fan at this point in his career, especially in the playoffs, where, as Floyd used to always say about Arvidsson, when the big good guys play hard, they always beat the little good guys. And that's what Arvidsson is. I would not have signed Arvidsson if I were them. So that does not move the needle for me. And while I like their defense, again, with Bouchard and Ekholm, Stuart Skinner is not UC Saros, and he is not Jake Ottinger. And so while he was okay down the stretch in the playoffs, Edmonton just basically kept possession of the puck, and they just, 14 shots on net. But Stuart Skinner was fine. He's not an elite goalie. He's not going to be an elite goalie. And now there's a lot of pressure on Edmonton. And we also should note, Edmonton is being run by Jeff Jackson, who is Connor McDavid's agent. He has been named the team president. He is running the team. Kenny Holland, the general manager, they did not renew his contract. He got fired. I guess game 7 of the Cup Finals not good enough. Kenny Holland got fired. I am not a believer in Edmonton next year, even though I love McDavid. I have them 3rd. I think that they're getting a little too top heavy, and I don't like their management.
Number 4.
Vegas. Yes, Marchessault and Chandler Stevenson are gone. And apparently, even though I never heard of Chandler Stevenson, apparently he's pretty good, because he got 7 years and $625. So, whatever. They have no goaltending. Aiden Hill and Samsonov. But Jack Eichel, Thomas Hertl, Mark Stone, Noah Hannafin, even the corpse of Alex Pietrangelo, They do also have that shady cap circumvention skills that they love to bring out all the time. In fact, Jonathan Marchessault said on the morning show to Adam today, he said, yeah, they wanted me to take deferred payments. So clearly Vegas is, they use the LTIR to screw with the cap. Now they're using deferred payments. They're the Dodgers. They're the Dodgers of the Western Conference. But they got a lot of holes. And that's what happens when you go for it every year and you don't have draft picks and you're not replenishing within, is there are going to be holes when guys leave. And they've got holes. So with Vegas, I think Bruce Cassidy is a great coach, but they're lacking in net, and they don't have Marchessault anymore, and they don't have Chandler Stevenson anymore, and they still got some good players, but I have to knock them down a peg. I just don't see Vegas as a cup contender right now.
Number 5.
Vancouver. So I look at Vancouver and what they did. I feel like they just went to Boston and just traded, Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov for Heinen, DeBrusk, and Derrick Forbort. And I don't think any of those guys are great, though. I do have a soft spot for DeBrusk. Like, I would have liked DeBrusk on the Predators, but I think he's also the kind of player that pisses you off as much as you love him. But the thing about Vancouver is they got some pop. They showed us that in the playoff series by beating you, and I think beating you rather handedly with a backup goalie. They didn't do much as far as free agency is concerned, though they did add Kiefer Sherwood to go with all those Boston guys they added. But that was a really good team last year. They'll be a year older. I cannot imagine that Elias Pettersson is going to have as bad of a playoffs as he had this past year. Plus Thatcher Demko, healthy, he's one of the best goalies in the league. I do like Vancouver. I do not think that all the winning they did early in the season this past year, I don't think that's a fluke. I'll go Vancouver at 5. So I had to include a 6th team because there's one team I'm sure you've been waiting for that I have not put into the equation, number 6.
Number 6.
Colorado. And Colorado's 6th in the Western Conference? The Avalanche? I think they're 6th. Here's the deal with Colorado. McKinnon and Makar are as good at what they do as anybody in the game today. That includes McDavid. That includes Matthews. That includes the MVP of the league is Nathan McKinnon. Cale Makar, in my opinion, is the best defenseman in the league. He's better than Yossi. Yossi's 2. But outside of that, their entire team is unimpressive to me. Landeskog is hurt, and I'm not sure he'll ever be healthy again. Georgiev, the goalie, kind of sucks. And you look at their lines, and it's a bunch of nobodies and disappointments. Congratulations, you re-signed Jonathan Drouin. Way to go. Guy hadn't been good in 6 years. Now, I know that they'll make some moves like they did last year when they got rid of Johansson and they added Walker and they added Casey Middlestat, and they'll make some moves. And I'm not counting out McKinnon or Makar. But outside of those two, it's not a very good team. And I think the big problem they have is they've got the issue with Landeskog and his health, and they've got the issue with Val Nichushkin. And I don't know how that's going to resolve itself, but I don't think that's going to resolve itself with him being on the team. So I've got Colorado at 6. Dallas 1, Nashville 2, Edmonton 3, Vegas 4, Vancouver 5, Colorado 6, and I don't think anybody else is capable of winning the Western Conference. And I did not, when I went out to do this, I did not start this exercise by thinking I'm going to put the Predators at 2. But I had to. 615-737-1025, your reaction. Are the Predators worthy of being my second top team behind Dallas in the Western Conference? 615-737. Did actually care about when I did this exercise that I've complained about almost all year. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Let's talk about UC Saros. The game changes sometimes, and you don't notice it changes for a couple of years, and then you're sort of have to reinvent yourself a little bit or adjust a little bit to where the game is. So I think Mitch is the best in the business with Ben Vanderklok and Jason, and we still have Pecoreni. I think our goaltending is in great shape for the future. Saros is one of those elite athletes that is iconic like Pex is. I mean, and so when you have those guys, it's hard to let them go because of what they mean to the franchise and how they play on the ice. And then having a guy like Askarov, who is a tremendous talent.
There you go. That was Barry Trotz talking about the Predators goaltending. And the reason I played that cut is because I just ranked the Western Conference as of right now, in which the Predators betting odds are absolutely skyrocketing across the place. I have ranked the Western Conference. Dallas 1, Nashville 2, Edmonton 3, Vegas 4, Vancouver 5, and Colorado 6. And I want to address this before Willie Donick texts me about it. I know Willie's doing something right now and he's not listening, because had Willie heard that segment, Ian, he would have texted both of us.
Yeah, they were on Zoom today. I think he was in Atlanta. I think his son has a baseball situation. I think it was Atlanta. I could be wrong on the city, but.
Aha. Well, when you said he was in Atlanta, I was thinking it might be a Bally Sports something or another. And I'm like,
no, I think it's for his son.
I hope this is the last month that Bally Sports is alive, by the way. I want everybody to know that. They've got a hearing on July 29th in bankruptcy court. Judge Lopez, if you are listening, and I want everybody to know that I have lost about 90% of my faith in the judicial system. But Judge Lopez, if you are listening to local Nashville sports radio, please get rid of Bally Sports. Not because I'm, a conservative or a progressive and I feel a certain way and I want you to vote with my side. It's I want you to get rid of this channel so I can watch the games on regular TV. Does anybody object? Thank you. But I digress on that. Because if Willie was listening to my power rankings, again, Dallas number 1, Nashville number 2, Edmonton 3, Vegas 4, Vancouver 5, and Colorado 6, he would have said, how could you rank teams the way you ranked them? You went through each team, you used the explanations that you had, and in most cases, teams that have good goaltending got bumped up. Dallas number 1, good goaltending. Nashville number 2, good goaltending. What was one of my knocks on Edmonton? Edmonton right now is the betting favorite to win the cup next year. One of my big knocks was they don't have very good goaltending. And so if you don't have good goaltending, it's going to be a little bit of a knock. Vancouver at 5 gets a little bit of a bump because Vancouver's got Thatcher Demko, and Thatcher Demko didn't play in the playoffs, and Thatcher Demko right now is the second best goalie in the league. And so it hit me when I did this list, when I was writing down, okay. And I literally looked at all the rosters, because originally I had Colorado at 5 and didn't have Vegas in the top 5. And I was like, wait a minute. Vegas is absolutely a top 5 team. And I did not want to throw Colorado completely out of it, because with McKinnon and McCart, I could see them winning the cup. And so I don't want to sit here and say that they can't do it. But again, one of my knocks on Colorado, goaltending. One of my knocks on Vegas, goaltending. So it's not the end-all be-all, but I do think goaltending means something. And this year, Florida, very good team. Whether it's Tkachuk or Barkov or Reinhart or Verhaeghe or Bennett or all those guys. By the way, did you see the guy that was picked one pick after Askarov today? Anton Liddell signed like a 5-year, $6 million per contract extension. It's their third line center. Be nice to have on this team centering that second line with Stamkos and Marchessault instead of Askarov, but I digress. But for somebody who has constantly bemoaned goaltending, because Vegas has won the cup without goaltending, because Colorado's won the cup without goaltending, Because outside of when he did play well in the series, Bobrovsky was not that good. I was a little surprised at how much, when push came to shove, I stuck my foot down and said goaltending and felt like it mattered to me. So I'm just a little surprised by that. Even though I'm not a goaltending guy and I'm not a total believer in the Saros contract. I mean, I still think you have to have a goalie. Like, if I had a choice of having a goalie or not having a goalie, I would take the goalie. Ian, what are your thoughts on my list? I told you, because you said you thought it was a hot take, and it is a Fireball Hot Take Friday today. You thought it was a hot take that I had the Predators too. Where do you put the Predators on the list?
And now, is this the list of your Western Conference Cup contenders? Like, how you feel the best chance to win the Cup, or how you think the standings might kind of shape up?
Western Conference contention.
Western Conference contention. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I thought the list overall was pretty good. You know, I do wonder if there's like a dark horse team in here somewhere that we're kind of forgetting.
I thought about that, but I can't assume that today.
Yeah, looking through it, and no one really stands out. The Kings don't really stand out as a dark horse team. Perhaps Winnipeg. They had a good regular season. They had 110 points in the regular season, and they haven't really lost anybody other than Monahan, and he was just a trade acquisition at the deadline. So they still have, Kyle Connor and Scheifele and Hellebuck and all those guys and Ehlers. But I will go, if I had to rank these 6, I would probably go Edmonton 1.
Of course you would.
Dallas 2. Vegas 3. Colorado 4. Nashville 5. Vancouver 6.
I mean, Colorado?
Oh, yeah, they've been there, done that. And
But they don't have any players anymore.
They don't have Cale Makar or Nathan McKinnon
They have 2 players.
or Remax Rantanen.
Nah, I'm not a Rantanen guy. And Rantanen will sign for $1 gazillion. I know. But I'm not a Rantanen guy.
So, I mean, those guys can carry them.
Can they do that without Nichushkin or Landeskog?
Maybe.
I just don't like everybody that's going to put Edmonton first. That is such a recency bias thing. I mean, Dallas and
they
Edmonton
made it far the year before.
Dallas and Edmonton were neck and neck, and Dallas has better goaltending.
And Edmonton still made it further this year.
They did, but
there's something funky
neck.
with Dallas. Dallas it's got some older players. Pavelski's not going to be able to put up the same numbers. He's kind of dropping off. Ben had like a super good season. I don't think he'll do as much. I mean, they still have a couple of the younger players in Stankoven and Wyatt Johnston, who's pretty good.
Maverick Bork.
So those guys maybe might take a step up. But Duchesne, is he going to be able to, there's something weird with Dallas that I trust them more in the regular season. Vegas still has Stone and Eichel and all those guys, and their experience will take them far in the playoffs.
And they'll do something at the deadline. They'll end up with
They'll add
Nick
somebody.
David.
And so Edmonton's proven that they can make a deep playoff run multiple seasons in a row. So they'll still be fighting for a spot in the Western Conference final, I would assume. So I'll go Edmonton, Dallas, Vegas. Maybe you could convince me Nashville over Colorado, but they still have the best 2 players in McKinnon and Makar. So I'll put Colorado 4th, Nashville 5th, Vancouver 6th.
So here's what I would say about Dallas. That maybe Wyatt Johnston is the answer to for them. You have 340 goal scorers on your team. They had, I think, 5 guys or 6 guys that scored 20 this past year. They don't have a single guy that scored 40. And that's where I look at it come playoff time, where I'm like, can they really rely on Rope Hintz?
Yeah, Hintz and Robertson kind of took a step back for them in the playoffs. But, I mean, they have Wyatt Johnson had 32. Rope Hintz had 30. And as you said, Duchesne had 25. Jamie Benn had 21. Robertson had 29, so almost 30. Pavelski still had 27. He was 39 years old. I don't see that really continuing. But, and they still got Mason Marchment, who's kind of youngish, who's not terrible. I don't know. Dallas is still good. Whether or not they'll be able to step it up in the playoffs will be another question. But
I'm standing with Dallas at number 1. But your talk about Dallas is actually making me think about putting the Predators up to number 1.
oh yeah,
I mean, again, all the Predators lack right now is a number 1 center. And I ran the numbers yesterday. And again, goal differential is not everything, but it is something. I mean, I think goal differential is a pretty good indicator of if you're good or not.
it's just hard to project with the Preds since we haven't seen this group together before.
And they're old, so they could get worse.
And so, yeah, there could be a little bit of a.
But just using goal differential, last year the Predators were plus 21, which is not contender status. Plus 50, plus 60. That's contender status. You take away Kiefer Sherwood's 10, Yakov Trenton's 10, Jason Zucker's 5, Ryan McDonough's 3, and then 4 guys scored, including some guy named Fajimo, who went back to LA. He scored once, and a couple other guys scored once. So you take those goals out, and then you add Marchessault, Shea, and Stamkos, and it goes from plus 21 to plus 84.
And those guys do know how to win in the playoffs.
And they know how to win in the playoffs.
And so does
I'm not worried.
And so does Yossi.
I'm not worried about, whether or not Stamkos is going to score on the power play when he had 19 goals last year. So your talk about Dallas is actually making me wonder if Nashville should be number 1. I am not putting Edmonton with Stuart Skinner in net. I am not putting them number 1.
Even though they already made it once.
Even though they made it once. Everybody can make it once. Everybody can win the conference once.
The year before, too.
You made it far, with Rene, and that team I don't look at as, when I really look back on it, as magical as that run was, that team was not a championship caliber team. We'll get your thoughts on that. 615-737-1025. Plus, Barry Trotz is all in. He's all in on his serial winners. He talked about it the day he got hired. And damn it, if that man has not been all in on it since he's had the job. But does that actually matter? We'll get to that next. Let's talk Window Nation first. It is hot out there. Heat index is going to be up over 100 degrees over the holiday weekend. And if you've got inefficient windows, they're not going to be taking a break from being inefficient. No, they will stay inefficient. And that means high utility bills all year long. My friends at Window Nation, and I really trust them. I had them out to my home, and I said, show me what windows I need to replace. And they went through my home and said, your windows are fine. You don't need to replace them. I was shocked. But it made me really believe in Window Nation and the honesty that they really, truly preach. Window Nation sells some of the most energy-efficient windows. And right now, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows for free, plus 0 down and no interest or payments for 2 years. So stop paying more than you have to. Schedule an in-home estimate right now at 866-90Nation or visit windownation.com. Again, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free plus 0 down and no interest or payments for 2 years. That's 866-90Nation, windownation.com. How much does winning in the past mean to you for those same players winning in the future with this team right now, but also what it means for Evangelista, what it means for this whole plethora of young guys that have been brewing, whether it's Kimmel or LaRue or Svechkov or Schaefer or whomever. I mean, how big was that winning to you as the coach?
Well, I think you could see the effect it had on our organization this year and our young kids and the Evangelistas and the Novaks and the Lozons and the Cars, like that, to be around Ryan O'Reilly, Ryan McDonough, guys that Luke Shen that comes in, guys that have won and they're as Barry will call them, serial winners. You can't have enough of them. And I think organizationally, culturally, that is imperative. And I've seen it firsthand with our group from watching how they mesh with Ryan O'Reilly and these guys, and watching them grow as not just hockey players, but leaders. I mean, we're getting lucky here. Obviously we got a great first tier, we got a secondary tier, and some of our young guys are learning and they're falling that third tier. So you can't have enough of them, I think, as an organization. And we're blessed, and you get Stamkos and Marchessault that come in that have won. Brady Shea's been an outstanding team his whole career. So to have those guys come in, we're just going to, our young guys are sponges off them. And again, back to the identity and who we are, I think they'll come in and fit in real good.
That was Andrew Burnett on our program, and I asked him, Barry Trotz took the job. And the day he took the job, remember, it was kind of a passing of the torch. David Poyle had a press conference, and they thanked David for everything, and then Barry was kind of standing off the side. It was almost like wrestling, and then Barry came walking out, and Barry talked about his vision for the future and everything else. And I was driving back after the press conference, and I was listening to Barry, who was on the air with Chase at the time. And Barry was talking about serial winners. And he was like, because we had talked about all the guys that they were trying to move at that point in time, like Ekholm and Granlund and Jeannot and Niederreiter. And he said, Ryan McDonough has put me out in the playoffs twice in back-to-back years in Tampa. I'm not moving that guy. That guy is a serial winner, and we need more guys like that. And I remember hearing that and being like, well, he's not moving McDonough. And then when Barry had his first opportunity to practice what he preached, he went out and he signed Ryan O'Reilly. And once he signed Ryan O'Reilly and he signed Luke Shin, and the only thing Luke Shin has on his resume right now that says this guy needs to be on defense in the NHL is that he's won the cup in the past. But when he signed O'Reilly, who is the definition of a gets more out of his talent than maybe any player in this era of the NHL. I really mean that. When we look back at the guys who have hoisted the cup over their heads and have been the reason that their team has done so, there are going to be two guys that kind of stand out as, that guy willed his team. O'Reilly and Marchessault. And they both play for you. Normally, the guy who wins the Conn Smythe is Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby. O'Reilly's not that guy. So O'Reilly is the definition of a winner at heart. He's just got everything he does. He wins. You want to be around him. Everything's positive. And so the question has to be asked. As the Predators went out and they added two guys that have won 3 cups, and Stamkos and Marchessault. And Brady Shea is no bum by any stretch of the imagination. But as Barry Trotz did that, with these guys in their 30s, again, by the time that these deals are up, Jonathan Marchessault will be 38, Steven Stamkos will be 37, Roman Josi will be 38, Brady Shea will be 37, UC Saros will be 37, Philip Forsberg will be 35. The question has to be, do you really believe that the winning mentality of Ryan O'Reilly, of Steven Stamkos, of Jonathan Marchessault, will that be transferred via osmosis to Luke Evangelista, to Matthew Wood, to Joachim Kimmel, to Yaroslav Askarov, to Tanner Mullendijk? They're betting yes. That the tone setter, the culture setter, that will have a lasting impact. I buy it. I actually believe that it will. I actually believe that there is something to this. First off, I'm so glad that we're not looking at players whose behavior or their underperformance or whatever we have to excuse. It's not like they're so desperate for a playmaker that they signed a guy who's got a history of domestic violence, and we have to talk about that. It's not like they're so desperate for a guy that they took a guy that, nobody wants to be around. They say he's a bad locker room guy. They say those I hate. Even the guys like Duchesne, where Adam Vingan's saying, guys, the stats do not add up. I know everybody thinks that Duchesne's a big boy forward. I know he's made an all-star team. I know David Boyle loves him, but the stats do not add up. He is not that player. We're not saying that about Stamkos because we know it's not true. The only thing with Stamkos is he's old. But there has to be a hope that as you build with young dudes, that winning attitude ends up rubbing off on the young players. And I actually think that this is a real thing. I think there is something to working with somebody that you grew up idolizing. I've never worked with Colin Cowherd, but I was a big Colin Cowherd fan even before I got into talk radio. Once I got into talk radio, I wanted to be Colin Cowherd. Now, I know there are differences between Colin and I. I'm not sitting here making analogies to when you went to the shopping market. I'm not talking about LeBron's brand, but I looked up to Colin Cowherd a lot. When the guy that hired Colin Cowherd to ESPN, who was originally his program director in Portland, Oregon, when he picked me out of Louisville, Kentucky, there was definitely a jolt of electricity that got me excited. When these guys go to work with Steven Stamkos every day, there's going to be a certain level of excitement, a certain level of, hey, I want to be like that guy. I want to match that guy's level of professionalism that I think does matter. And the only experience I have of kind of watching a dynasty day in and day out were the 90s and 2000s Atlanta Braves. They won 14 straight division titles. They were the worst team in baseball in 1990, and they had a bunch of good young prospects. They had guys that were knocking on the door right there, John Smoltz and Tom Glavine and Ron Gant and David Justice. They had other guys on the way like Chipper Jones and Andrew Jones. And what did they do? When John Sherholtz got there, the general manager that won all those division titles, brought in Terry Pendleton and Charlie Leibrandt. Winners. The analytics and the gurus and the number guys, I don't think they have a spreadsheet that talks about having the right culture and the right dressing room and the right attitude and everything else. But your organization's not run by the analytics department. You're not going to have, Barry Trotz is not going to get in front of the microphone the way Kelly McCrimmon did this week when explaining why they didn't re-sign Jonathan Marchessault and said the data does not back it up for 5 years. Barry Trotz ain't going to do that because at his core, he's a coach. And as we've gotten more analytical and as we've gotten more nerdy in sports, the more I'm convinced that the traditional this is how to do it actually works. And I'm not saying there's not a place for analytics. And the Predators have an analytics department. And Barry comes on the show during the year and he's like, yeah, the analytics department says blah, blah, blah. But it's only a tool to help. It is not how you build your team. I think the way Barry wants to build this team, I actually think it's going to work. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 through the game. Very rarely on this program do we opine on matters of the NBA. In fact, most of our NBA discussions are just about how crappy the NBA has become. There's no way around that. So yesterday, Dalton Connect held his introductory press conference with the Los Angeles Lakers, except for the fact that nobody was really interested in talking to Dalton. Didn't even see a quote that had anything to do with Dalton Connect. But the reality is, when it comes to Dalton Connect, that what everybody is actually talking about is Bronny James. That's what everybody wants to talk about. Old Bronny James. That's the number one thing. And apparently the Lakers, I don't know if you guys listened last week when the Lakers selected Bronny while we were on the air, and I had a full-blown meltdown. But what's amazing to me when it comes to the Los Angeles Lakers is just how transparent all of this has been. LeBron was a free agent. They wanted to keep LeBron because LeBron James is LeBron James. They wanted to keep LeBron James. LeBron was a free agent. And so what did they do in order to keep LeBron? They acquiesced to every wish. They fired the coach and they hired his podcast buddy. And when everybody said, you did this because you're trying to appease LeBron James, they said, no, that's not true. ESPN's Dave McMenamin reported that it was actually Anthony Davis that they talked to and not LeBron when it came to the decision to hire JJ Redick. The guy who had no coaching experience and was LeBron's podcast buddy, they talked to Anthony Davis. Right. Then they drafted Bronny in the second round. Bob Myers, who's a former GM, was on the desk at ESPN. I would think that old Bob Myers has some pretty good sources. Bob Myers' sources told him that Rich Paul, the agent for Bronny James, who owns that Clutch Sports with LeBron, was telling every team, do not draft Bronny or else he's going to go to Australia. Not that anybody probably wants to draft Bronny because Bronny sucks, but don't do it. And what bothered me more than anything was not the fact that Bronny didn't, get drafted by these other teams. What bothered me is the reason the other teams didn't draft Bronny is not because they were afraid he would go to Australia. Bronny didn't get drafted because, again, I'm trying to be completely honest with everybody here. They were afraid of the wrath of the agency that has all these great NBA players if they defied LeBron's wishes to play with his son. Then the Lakers drafted him. Then they gave an absurd contract. The guy who had the same pick last year signed for like $600,000 and was a two-way contract. Bronny's got a four-year guaranteed contract. And JJ Redick had the audacity to get up in front of everybody and basically say, Bronny earned this. Can I just tell you something? As somebody who does not care about the Lakers, the NBA, Bronny James, I don't care about any of it. I really don't. Can I just say, though, what I don't like is I don't like the idea of insulting everybody's intelligence all the time, which is exactly what that is. That is insulting to sit there and say that we, the mighty Los Angeles Lakers, decided that we were going to hire LeBron James' podcast buddy, but we really didn't actually mean it that. In fact, we really did it because we think he's a great coach. I'm not stupid enough to believe that, and I don't think anybody else is either. If I had to be completely honest with you, I'm not that stupid. It's insulting when you just lie to people like that, and it is unbecoming of the brand. That's it for us. Everybody have a safe and a wonderful Independence Day weekend, Independence Day, you name it. I want to thank all of the brave men and women that have fought for our country, that defend the freedoms that we have here in America. I want to thank you for your hard work and for your dedication and support and everything else. We could not have this country. Even though we've got our problems, we could not have this country without you. I am off until about training camp. So we will see you then. We got great programming on the way. Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody. 102.5. Have a great weekend. 102.5, 106 for the game.